What happens when a single father discovers his billionaire boss is about to lose everything, and the evidence to save her is hidden in plain sight? This is the story of Adrian Cole, a man who never imagined that one joke, one offer, would put him at the center of the most dangerous corporate conspiracy his company had ever seen. If you want to know how an ordinary operations manager became the only person standing between truth and total destruction, stay with me until the end. And when you finish, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in the 8th floor hallway buzzed with that particular frequency that only appeared after midnight, when the daytime hum of productivity had long since faded into an almost oppressive silence. Adrian Cole stood at the coffee machine, watching the thin stream of dark liquid fill his paper cup with mechanical precision. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday, and he was alone, or so he thought. The tech firm where Adrian worked as operations manager occupied 12 floors of a glass tower in the heart of the city. During business hours, the building teemed with hundreds of employees, their voices creating a constant backdrop of innovation, ambition, and controlled chaos. But at this hour, the office transformed into something else entirely. A cathedral of empty cubicles and darkened conference rooms, where the only sound was the occasional whisper of the HVAC system and the distant rumble of the city outside. Adrian had been putting in late nights for weeks now. The quarterly operational review was approaching, and as the person responsible for tracking every workflow, approval process, and efficiency metric across 6 departments, he bore the weight of ensuring everything ran smoothly. It wasn't glamorous work. Nobody wrote headlines about operations managers, but it was essential. Adrian had learned long ago that the people who kept things running were rarely the ones who got the credit. But he didn't mind. The overtime pay helped cover his daughter Maya's expenses, and working late meant he could leave early enough tomorrow afternoon to pick her up from school. At 7 years old, Maya was the center of his universe, the reason he woke up every morning and the person who made every sacrifice worthwhile. He took a sip of coffee, burnt and bitter, as office coffee always was after hours, and turned to head back to his desk. That's when he heard it, a soft sound, almost like a sigh coming from somewhere down the hall. Adrian paused. The 8th floor should have been completely empty. Security had done their rounds an hour ago, and the cleaning crew wouldn't arrive until after 1 in the morning. He stood perfectly still, listening. There it was again. A breath. Maybe a whispered word. Definitely human. His first instinct was concern. Someone might need help. His second instinct, which came half a second later, was caution. He was alone in a building after midnight, and for all he knew, he was about to stumble into something he shouldn't see. But Adrian had never been the type to ignore someone who might be in trouble. He followed the sound, his footsteps quiet on the industrial carpet. The hallway led past the executive suite, with its imposing wooden doors and brass nameplates that designated the territory of vice presidents and senior directors. At the very end of the corridor near the copy room, he saw something that made him stop in his tracks. Victoria Langford was sitting on the floor, not standing, not pacing, not doing any of the things a billionaire CEO might be expected to do. She was sitting cross-legged on the carpet, her back against the wall, her phone in one hand, and her shoes, expensive heels that probably cost more than Adrian's monthly rent, kicked off beside her. For a moment, Adrian genuinely wondered if he was hallucinating. Victoria Langford didn't sit on floors. She commanded boardrooms. She appeared in business magazines. She had built this company from a scrappy startup into a tech empire worth billions, and she did it with a combination of brilliant strategy and relentless determination that had become legendary in the industry. And yet, there she was, looking utterly, impossibly human. "Ms. Langford?" Adrian's voice came out quieter than he intended. She looked up, startled. For just a fraction of a second, he saw something in her expression. Exhaustion, maybe, or frustration, before her professional mask slipped back into place. "Adrian." She said his name like she was slightly surprised she remembered it. "Working late?" "Quarterly review prep," he said, feeling suddenly awkward. Is everything okay?" Victoria let out a short laugh that held no real humor. "Define okay." Adrian wasn't sure how to respond to that. In his 3 years at the company, he'd probably spoken directly to Victoria Langford fewer than a dozen times, and those conversations had been brief, professional exchanges at company events or the occasional elevator ride. She existed in a different stratosphere, a world of private jets, charity galas, and board meetings that determined the fate of thousands of employees. He was about to excuse himself and retreat to the safety of his desk when she spoke again. "My penthouse is being renovated," Victoria said, still looking at her phone. 6 weeks of drilling and dust and contractors who somehow always need to access the exact room I'm trying to work in. So I rented a temporary place across town. Very nice, very expensive, very... She paused, her jaw tightening. Suddenly unavailable as of this evening. Unavailable? Adrian echoed. Pipe burst. Flooded 3 floors. Building management just informed me I need to be out by tomorrow morning. She looked up at him then, and her eyes held a weariness he'd never seen before. I have nowhere to stay in the city for the next week, and I have board meetings, investor calls, and a product launch that cannot be postponed. Hotels are full because of some technology conference, and I'd rather not deal with paparazzi camping in a lobby. Adrian felt a strange cognitive dissonance. This was a woman who could buy entire buildings, and yet she was sitting on an office floor at midnight because of a housing problem. The absurdity of it made him respond without thinking. You could always move in with me. The words were out before his brain caught up with his mouth. He'd meant it as a joke, a way to lighten the moment, to acknowledge the surreal situation they both found themselves in. A billionaire CEO with nowhere to stay. A single father offering his modest apartment. It was ridiculous. Victoria looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Then she laughed, a real laugh this time, warm and genuine. That's very kind, Adrian. I appreciate the thought. Of course, he said quickly, feeling his face heat up. I was just joking, I know. She smiled, but there was something in her eyes that lingered. But thank you. It's been a while since someone offered me something without wanting something in return. The moment hung between them, strange and fragile. Then Victoria stood, smoothly retrieving her shoes and slipping them back on with practiced ease. The transformation was immediate. The exhausted woman on the floor vanished, replaced by the CEO, whose picture hung in the lobby downstairs. I should go, she said. I'm sure I'll figure something out. I always do. Good night, Ms. Langford. Victoria, she corrected. If we're going to share office space at midnight, you might as well call me Victoria. Good night, Victoria. She walked past him, her footsteps confident now, heels clicking against the tile as she headed toward the elevators. Adrian watched her go, still processing what had just happened. Then he shook his head, returned to his desk, and tried to focus on the spreadsheet full of operational metrics that needed his attention. But his concentration was shot. The image of Victoria Langford sitting on that floor, vulnerable and human and unexpectedly real, kept intruding on his thoughts. He found himself wondering about her life, what it must be like to have everything and still find yourself temporarily homeless, what it must be like to be so powerful and yet so alone. At 1:30 a.m., Adrian finally packed up his things and headed home. The city outside was quiet, the streets mostly empty except for the occasional taxi and the ever-present glow of streetlights reflecting off glass towers. He drove his aging sedan through familiar neighborhoods, past the coffee shop where he bought Maya's favorite hot chocolate, past the park where they spent Sunday afternoons, until he reached the apartment complex that had been home for the past 4 years. It wasn't much. A 2-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades, but it was theirs. Adrian unlocked the door as quietly as possible and stepped inside. Mrs. Chen, his elderly neighbor who watched Maya when he worked late, was dozing on the couch. She stirred as he entered. She went to bed at 9, Mrs. Chen whispered, gathering her knitting bag. Finished her homework, ate all her dinner. Good girl. Thank you so much, Adrian said, pressing 2 20s into her hand despite her protests. I don't know what I'd do without you. After Mrs. Chen left, Adrian checked on Maya. She was curled up in her small bed, clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 3. Her dark hair spread across the pillow, and her face was peaceful in sleep. Adrian watched her for a moment, feeling the familiar swell of love and protectiveness that came every time he saw her. This was his world. This small apartment, this sleeping child, this quiet life. It wasn't glamorous or exciting, but it was real. It mattered. He had no way of knowing that in less than 12 hours, his world and Victoria Langford's were about to collide in ways neither of them could have imagined. The next morning began like any other Friday. Adrian woke at 6, made breakfast, and got Maya ready for school. They had their routine down to a science. Cereal and orange juice at 6:30, teeth brushing at 6:50, backpack check at 7:05, out the door by 7:15. "Don't forget I'm picking you up early today," Adrian reminded her as they walked to the car. "We're going to get ice cream after school." Maya's face lit up. "Chocolate chip?" "Whatever flavor you want, kiddo." He dropped her off at school, waited until she disappeared through the front doors with a backward wave, then drove to the office. Traffic was heavy, as it always was on Friday mornings, and he used the time to mentally prepare for the day ahead. There were 3 meetings scheduled, 2 reports due, and a mountain of emails that had probably accumulated overnight. What he didn't expect was to find Victoria Langford waiting at his desk. She was standing near his cubicle, looking somehow both out of place and completely in command, dressed in an elegant navy suit that probably cost more than his car. Several employees had noticed her presence and were pretending not to stare while absolutely staring. "Good morning, Adrian," she said as he approached. "Good morning," he replied cautiously. "Is everything okay? Can we talk? Somewhere private?" The request sent a small jolt of anxiety through him. When the CEO asked to speak privately, it usually meant one of 2 things. You were getting promoted or you were getting fired. Adrian couldn't imagine he was getting promoted. They ended up in a small conference room on the 9th floor, the kind used for one-on-one meetings and phone calls. Victoria closed the door behind them and turned to face him. "I need to ask you something," she said, "and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course." "Last night, when you offered to let me stay with you, was that offer serious?" Adrian felt like the floor had suddenly become unstable. I was joking. I didn't think—" "I know you were joking," Victoria interrupted, "but I'm asking if, hypothetically, you would be willing to actually do it. Let me stay in your apartment for a few days." He stared at her, trying to process what she was asking. You actually want to stay at my place? I know how this sounds." Victoria's expression was earnest, almost urgent. "But let me explain. The situation with my housing is more complicated than I mentioned last night. There's a legal dispute. My ex-husband is claiming he's entitled to half the value of the penthouse, even though it was purchased entirely with my assets before we married. His lawyers have filed an emergency injunction that's tied up access while the courts sort it out. It's absurd. It's going to be resolved in my favor, but it's going to take time." Adrian tried to wrap his mind around the idea that even billionaires had landlord problems. "What about a hotel? Every hotel in the city is either fully booked or crawling with media. There's a technology conference this week, and apparently I'm newsworthy enough that photographers camp out in lobby bars hoping for a photo. I need somewhere quiet, somewhere normal, somewhere no one would think to look. A modest 3rd-floor apartment in a building with no doorman and questionable plumbing." "Exactly." Victoria's eyes held his. "I know this is an extraordinary request. I'm offering to pay whatever you think is fair. I just need a place to sleep and shower for a week, maybe less. I'll stay out of your way. You won't even know I'm there." Adrian thought about his apartment. 2 bedrooms, one for him, one for Maya. The spare room was technically his home office, but it was just a desk and a bookshelf. He could move those into the living room for a week. He thought about Maya, who was curious and talkative and would absolutely have questions about why her dad's boss was sleeping in their apartment. He thought about the sheer insanity of what Victoria was asking. And then he thought about the look in her eyes last night, sitting on that floor, exhausted and human and quietly desperate. "Okay," he heard himself say. Victoria blinked. "Okay? You can stay. But I have a daughter. She's 7. She'll have questions." "I understand. I'll be respectful of your space and your family. And I don't want payment. If you want to contribute to groceries or something, fine. But I'm not charging you rent to sleep on a spare bed for a week." Something shifted in Victoria's expression. Surprise, maybe, or gratitude. "Thank you, Adrian, truly." They worked out the logistics quickly. Victoria would arrive that evening around 7, after Adrian picked up Maya from school. She'd bring only what she could fit in one suitcase. She'd be quiet, considerate, and hopefully invisible. As they left the conference room, Adrian felt like he was watching himself from outside his body. Had he really just agreed to let his billionaire CEO move into his apartment? What was he thinking? But it was too late to back out now. Victoria shook his hand, a firm professional gesture that somehow felt absurdly formal given the circumstances, and walked away. Adrian returned to his desk in a daze. He had approximately 9 hours to figure out how to explain to his 7-year-old daughter that they were about to have a very unusual house guest. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Adrian tried to focus on work, but his mind kept wandering to the evening ahead. He left the office at 3, picked up Maya from school, and took her for the promised ice cream. They sat in a corner booth at their favorite shop, and Adrian tried to figure out how to broach the subject. "So, kiddo, I need to tell you something interesting." Maya looked up from her chocolate chip cone, her eyes bright with curiosity. "What?" "We're going to have a guest staying with us for a few days. My boss from work. She needs a place to stay while her apartment is being fixed." "Your boss?" Maya's eyes widened. "The lady from the pictures?" Adrian had occasionally shown Maya the company website, where Victoria's photo appeared in the leadership section. "Yeah, that's her. Her name is Victoria." "Is she nice?" "I think so, yes." "Can I show her my drawings?" Adrian smiled. Maya was going through an intense art phase, and their refrigerator was covered with pictures of cats, rainbows, and what she claimed were realistic horses, but looked more like elongated dogs. "We'll see. But remember, she's going to be working a lot, so we need to be respectful and give her space, okay?" "Okay, Daddy." They finished their ice cream and drove home. Adrian spent the next 2 hours in a cleaning frenzy, tidying the apartment with an intensity usually reserved for health inspections. He changed the sheets in the spare room, cleared his desk and bookshelf into the living room, and made sure the bathroom was presentable. At exactly 7 o'clock, there was a knock on the door. Adrian took a deep breath and opened it. Victoria stood in the hallway, wearing jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual business attire, a rolling suitcase beside her. Without the armor of her CEO persona, she looked younger, more approachable, almost nervous. "Hi," she said. "Hi, come in." Victoria stepped into the apartment, taking in the modest space with what Adrian hoped was an appreciative rather than critical eye. The living room was small but clean, with a worn couch, a coffee table that Maya used for homework, and a television that was at least 10 years old. Through the doorway, the kitchen was visible, cramped but functional, with cheerful yellow curtains that Adrian's late wife had hung years ago. "It's lovely," Victoria said, and she sounded sincere. "It's not, it's lovely," she repeated firmly. "Thank you for opening your home to me." Before Adrian could respond, Maya appeared from her bedroom, walking slowly like she was approaching a celebrity, which, in a way, she was. "Hi," Maya said shyly. Victoria crouched down to Maya's eye level, her expression softening in a way Adrian had never seen. "Hi there. You must be Maya. I've heard wonderful things about you." "Really?" Maya's shyness evaporated slightly. "From who?" "From your dad. He talks about you sometimes at work. He says you're very smart and very kind." Maya beamed. Adrian felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. "Do you want to see my drawings?" Maya asked. Victoria glanced at Adrian, who nodded his permission. "I would love to see your drawings." And just like that, the ice was broken. Maya led Victoria to the refrigerator and proceeded to give a detailed explanation of every picture on display, complete with backstories for each character and elaborate descriptions of their adventures. Victoria listened with what appeared to be genuine interest, asking questions and making appropriate impressed sounds. Adrian watched them from the kitchen doorway, feeling slightly overwhelmed by the surrealism of the moment. His daughter was showing refrigerator art to a billionaire. His apartment was now home to one of the most powerful women in the tech industry. Nothing about this made sense, and yet somehow it was happening. After Maya's impromptu art show, Adrian showed Victoria to the spare room. It was small and sparsely furnished, with just a bed, a nightstand, and a lamp. The window looked out over the parking lot. "It's not much," Adrian said apologetically. "It's perfect," Victoria assured him. "Seriously, Adrian, this is exactly what I need." She settled in quickly, unpacking her suitcase with efficient movements, while Adrian lingered awkwardly in the doorway. When she was done, she turned to him with a slightly uncertain expression. "I don't want to intrude on your evening routine," she said. "What would you normally be doing right now?" Usually getting Maya ready for bed, dinner, bath, story time? Then please, don't let me disrupt that. I'll just, she gestured vaguely toward the room, catch up on emails or something. But when Adrian went to help Maya with her bath, Victoria appeared in the kitchen and asked if she could help with dinner. Adrian, still not entirely sure how to navigate this strange situation, said yes. They worked together in the small kitchen, making grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, their movements careful and polite as they navigated around each other in the limited space. Maya chattered through dinner, her initial shyness completely gone as she told Victoria about school, her friends, her favorite books, and her extensive theories about why cats were superior to dogs. Victoria listened and responded with an attentiveness that surprised Adrian. She asked follow-up questions. She laughed at Maya's jokes. She seemed genuinely engaged. After dinner, Adrian did the dishes while Victoria helped Maya with a puzzle at the coffee table. When it was time for bed, Maya insisted that Victoria read the bedtime story. "If that's okay," Victoria said quickly, looking to Adrian for permission. "Of course," Adrian replied. He stood in the doorway of Maya's room, listening as Victoria read from a worn copy of Where the Wild Things Are, her voice taking on different characters for each wild thing. Maya was transfixed, her eyes wide as she followed along with the familiar story. When the story ended and Maya's eyes began to droop, Victoria said goodnight and slipped out of the room. Adrian tucked his daughter in, kissed her forehead, and turned off the light. "I like her," Maya whispered in the darkness. "Yeah," Adrian whispered back. "Me too." The weekend passed with surprising ease. Victoria was true to her word. She stayed out of the way, working from the spare room during the day, joining them for meals but never imposing. She was considerate, quiet, and respectful of their space and routines. But she was also there, present, part of their small world in a way that Adrian hadn't anticipated. On Saturday morning, she helped Maya make pancakes, teaching her a trick for getting them perfectly round. That afternoon, when Adrian took Maya to the park, Victoria came along, sitting on a bench with her laptop, but occasionally looking up to watch Maya on the swings. On Sunday, she insisted on buying groceries, returning with bags full of ingredients Adrian would never have thought to purchase, then cooking a dinner that made their small apartment smell like a restaurant. It was surreal. It was domestic. It was, despite everything, surprisingly comfortable, but Adrian knew it couldn't last. This wasn't real life. It was a temporary arrangement, a brief intersection of two very different worlds. Soon enough, Victoria's housing situation would be resolved, and she'd return to her penthouse and her life of board meetings and private jets. And Adrian would return to his quiet existence, raising his daughter and managing operational workflows. That was how it was supposed to go. What neither of them knew was that while Victoria was settling into the spare bedroom of a modest third-floor apartment, something else was unfolding inside the company they both worked for. Something that would shatter the temporary peace they'd found and force both of them to confront truths they'd been avoiding. Because at precisely 9:47 a.m. on Monday morning, while Victoria was preparing for a video conference in Adrian's spare room and Adrian was making coffee in his cubicle on the 8th floor, a senior executive named Marcus Blackwood was sitting in his corner office on the 12th floor, making a phone call that would change everything. "It's time," Marcus said into the phone, his voice low and controlled. "She's distracted, vulnerable. The board is already nervous about the quarterly numbers. All we need is one more push, and they'll start questioning her leadership." On the other end of the line, someone responded. Marcus smiled. "Don't worry," he said. "I have access to everything we need. By the end of this week, Victoria Langford's reputation will be in ruins, and the board will be looking for new leadership." He hung up, leaned back in his expensive leather chair, and looked out at the city below. After years of working in Victoria's shadow, watching her receive credit for strategies he'd helped develop, seeing her face on magazine covers while he remained anonymous, Marcus Blackwood was finally ready to take what he believed was rightfully his: the company, the power, the recognition. All he had to do was destroy the woman who currently stood in his way, and he had the perfect plan to do it. Monday morning brought with it the return to normal routines. Victoria left the apartment before Adrian and Maya, taking an Uber to the office so she could arrive early for her first meeting. Adrian dropped Maya at school, then headed to work, still feeling slightly disoriented by the strange new reality of his life. The office was busy, Monday morning energy filling the hallways with the sound of ringing phones and rapid conversations. Adrian settled into his desk and began working through his email backlog, trying to focus on the operational reports that needed his attention. At 10:30, his phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. "Coffee at 11? V." Adrian smiled and texted back his agreement. At 11, he found Victoria waiting by the coffee machine on the 8th floor, the same place where he'd encountered her just 4 days ago, when she'd been sitting on the floor and he'd made a joke that shouldn't have mattered. "How's the morning treating you?" he asked as they both filled their cups with questionable coffee. 5 meetings before noon, Victoria replied. 3 conference calls, 2 presentations, and 1 very tense conversation with the legal team about my ex-husband's ridiculous property claim. Sounds exhausting. It's a Monday. She took a sip of coffee and made a face. This is terrible. It's office coffee. Terrible is its natural state. They stood together in companionable silence, watching employees hurry past with arms full of folders and phones pressed to ears. It was such a normal moment, 2 coworkers sharing bad coffee, and yet it felt significant in a way Adrian couldn't quite define. "Thank you again," Victoria said quietly. "For everything. It's been easier than I expected, living with you and Maya." "You're easy to live with," Adrian replied honestly. "Maya adores you. She asked this morning if you could stay forever." Something flickered across Victoria's face, pleasure and sadness mixed together. "She's a remarkable kid. You're doing an amazing job with her." "I'm doing my best. That's all any of us can do." The moment stretched between them, comfortable and warm. Then Victoria's phone buzzed, and the spell broke. She glanced at the screen and sighed. "Board meeting in 15 minutes. Wish me luck." "Good luck." She walked away, coffee in hand, heels clicking on the tile. Adrian watched her go, then returned to his desk. He had no idea that the board meeting Victoria was walking into had been carefully orchestrated by Marcus Blackwood, that the agenda had been altered to include concerns about Project Titan, the major initiative Victoria had been personally overseeing for the past 6 months, that the data Marcus planned to present had been subtly manipulated to make it appear that Victoria had made costly mistakes in judgment, and he had no idea that in exactly 48 hours, he would be the only person standing between Victoria and total professional destruction. But for now, on this ordinary Monday morning, Adrian Cole was just an operations manager drinking bad coffee and thinking about the strange turns life could take. The storm was coming. He just didn't know it yet. The boardroom on the 14th floor was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, while the massive mahogany table could seat 20 people comfortably. Today, 12 board members occupied those seats, their expressions ranging from curious to concerned as Victoria entered the room. She moved with her characteristic confidence, nodding greetings to familiar faces as she took her position at the head of the table. Her assistant had briefed her on the agenda during the elevator ride. Standard quarterly review items, a discussion about market expansion, and something vague about Project Titan concerns that had been added at the last minute. Victoria wasn't worried. Project Titan was her initiative, a revolutionary software platform that would transform how the company delivered services to enterprise clients. She'd overseen every detail personally, from the initial concept to the development timeline. The project was on schedule, under budget, and exceeding performance benchmarks. What she didn't know was that Marcus Blackwood had spent the previous week carefully laying groundwork for this moment. "Let's begin," said Donald Reeves, the board chairman, a silver-haired man in his 60s who'd been with the company since its early days. "Victoria, perhaps you could update us on Project Titan's status." Of course." Victoria stood, activating the presentation display. "I'm pleased to report that we're ahead of schedule on all major deliverables. User testing has shown a 92% satisfaction rate, and we're projecting a full launch within 6 weeks." She clicked through slides showing performance metrics, user feedback, and financial projections. The numbers were strong, exceptionally strong. Several board members nodded approvingly. Then Marcus Blackwood cleared his throat. "Victoria, if I may," he said, his tone respectful but concerned. "I've been reviewing some of the back-end data, and I'm seeing some discrepancies that worry me." Victoria turned to him, her expression neutral. Marcus was a senior executive vice president, someone she'd trusted to help manage various company initiatives. They'd worked together for years, though their relationship had always been professional rather than warm. "What kind of discrepancies?" she asked. Marcus activated his own tablet, and a different set of slides appeared on the screen. "These are the actual cost figures from the development team compared to what's been reported in the project summaries. There's a significant variance. We're actually running 30% over budget, not under." Victoria felt a cold sensation in her chest. "That's not possible. I review those figures personally every week." "I have the documentation here." Marcus's voice remained calm, almost sympathetic. "I think there may have been some communication breakdowns between departments. The numbers you've been seeing were apparently preliminary estimates, not the final accounting." He distributed printed reports to each board member. Victoria watched their faces as they scanned the pages, saw concern replacing approval. She felt the room's energy shift, like a tide turning. "There's also the matter of the security protocols," Marcus continued. "The development team has raised concerns about potential vulnerabilities in the user authentication system, concerns that were apparently flagged weeks ago but not addressed." "I was never informed of any security concerns," Victoria said sharply. "The emails are in the shared drive. I can pull them up if you'd like." Donald Reeves leaned forward. "Victoria, is it possible you missed these communications?" "I don't miss communications about critical security issues," she replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. "If there were concerns, they should have been escalated to me immediately." "Perhaps," Marcus said gently. "With everything on your plate, some things slipped through the cracks. It happens to everyone. No one's questioning your dedication. We're just trying to understand what went wrong and how to fix it." The meeting continued for another excruciating hour. Marcus presented more data, more supposed evidence of oversight and mismanagement. Other executives chimed in with their own concerns, building on the narrative he'd constructed. Victoria defended herself, but she was operating in the dark, trying to refute claims based on documents she'd never seen. By the time the meeting ended, the damage was done. The board hadn't made any official decisions, but Victoria could see it in their eyes. Doubt. Questions about her leadership, uncertainty about whether she was still the right person to guide the company forward. She left the boardroom with her head high, refusing to show weakness. But inside she was reeling. In his office 3 floors below, Adrian was dealing with his own crisis, albeit a much smaller one. The operational database had crashed, taking with it 3 hours of work from a dozen different departments. His phone was ringing constantly with frustrated employees demanding to know when the system would be back online. "I'm working on it," he said for the 10th time that hour, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he tried to identify the source of the problem. "Give me 20 minutes. 19 minutes later, he'd isolated the issue, a corrupted file in the backup system, and restored everything from an earlier save point. Crisis averted. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes, and noticed the time. 1:47 p.m. He'd worked through lunch. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Bad day, very bad day. Need to work late tonight. Don't wait up." Adrian frowned at the message. He'd never seen Victoria sound rattled before. He texted back, "Everything okay?" The response came quickly. "We'll explain later. Just need to focus right now." The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and emails. Adrian left the office at his normal time, picked up Maya from school, and returned to the apartment. They had their usual evening routine, homework, dinner, playtime, but Adrian found himself glancing at the door, wondering when Victoria would return. At 8:30, Maya was in bed, and Adrian was cleaning up the kitchen when he heard a key in the lock. Victoria entered the apartment looking exhausted. Her professional armor cracked around the edges. She dropped her bag by the door and stood there for a moment, as if gathering the energy to move further. "Rough day?" Adrian asked quietly. Victoria let out a laugh that sounded more like a sigh. "You could say that. Are you hungry? I saved you some dinner. I'm not sure I can eat, but thank you." She moved to the couch and sat down heavily. Adrian hesitated, then joined her, maintaining a respectful distance. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator and the distant traffic outside. "Do you want to talk about it?" Adrian asked. Victoria closed her eyes. "Someone's trying to destroy everything I've built." The words hung in the air between them, stark and raw. Adrian felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean?" "The board meeting today. They presented evidence that I'd mismanaged Project Titan, that I'd overlooked critical issues, allowed costs to spiral, ignored security concerns. She opened her eyes and looked at him. But I didn't. I know I didn't. Someone fabricated this information or manipulated it, and I can't prove they did. Who would do that? I don't know. Victoria's voice was hollow. But whoever it is, they have access to internal systems. They know how to make it look legitimate, and they've clearly been planning this for a while. Adrian's mind was racing. He worked with internal systems every day. He understood approval workflows, document histories, audit trails. If someone had manipulated data, there would be traces, digital fingerprints that most people wouldn't think to look for. Victoria, he said slowly, what if I could help? She looked at him with tired eyes. How? My job is tracking operational workflows. I have access to system logs, approval chains, document versioning. If someone altered files or manipulated data, there might be evidence in places they wouldn't think to cover. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. You do that? Risk getting involved in corporate politics? You're living in my spare bedroom, Adrian said with a slight smile. I think we're past the point of keeping distance from each other's problems. Something shifted in Victoria's expression, gratitude, relief, and something else Adrian couldn't quite identify. Thank you, she said softly. But please be careful. If someone's willing to do this to me, I don't want them coming after you too. I'll be discreet. Just forward me whatever documentation you receive today. I'll start looking through it tonight. Victoria pulled out her phone and began transferring files. Adrian's laptop pinged with incoming emails, dozens of attachments, all labeled with project names and department codes. He opened the first one and began reading. 2 hours later, Adrian was still at the kitchen table, his laptop surrounded by scattered notes and empty coffee cups. Maya had been asleep for hours, and Victoria had retreated to the spare room, though Adrian could see light under her door and hear the occasional sound of her voice on phone calls. The documents were damning if you didn't know what to look for. Cost overruns, missed deadlines, ignored warnings. But Adrian's trained eye caught inconsistencies. Version numbers that didn't match the supposed creation dates. Approval stamps for managers who weren't even in those departments. Timestamps that suggested files had been modified recently but backdated to look older. Someone had done this carefully, professionally, but they'd made small mistakes, the kind only someone who worked deep in the operational weeds would notice. Adrian created a new spreadsheet and began documenting every discrepancy. By the time he finally closed his laptop at midnight, he had 37 items flagged for further investigation. It wasn't proof yet, but it was a start. The next morning, Tuesday, dawned gray and drizzly. Adrian dropped Maya at school, then headed to the office with his laptop bag feeling heavier than usual, weighted down by the knowledge he carried. He'd decided not to tell Victoria about his findings yet, not until he had something more concrete. The office had a different energy today. People clustered in small groups near the coffee machine, their voices low and urgent. Adrian caught fragments of conversation as he passed. Board meeting yesterday. Serious questions about leadership. Project Titan is a disaster. The rumors were spreading. Marcus Blackwood's poison was working its way through the company's bloodstream. Adrian settled at his desk and pulled up the system logs. He had legitimate access to these files as part of his operational oversight role, but he'd never used that access for something like this before. His heart was pounding as he navigated through layers of data, searching for the digital breadcrumbs that would reveal what really happened. At 10:15, his desk phone rang. It was Tom Chen, the IT security director. Adrian, you got a minute? Sure, what's up? Can you come to my office? Something weird is happening with the system logs. Adrian's stomach dropped. I'll be right there. Tom's office was in the basement, a cramped space surrounded by server racks and the constant white noise of cooling fans. Tom was a heavy-set man in his 40s, brilliant with computers and terrible with people. He and Adrian had worked together on several projects and had developed a mutual respect. Check this out, Tom said, gesturing to his monitor. Someone's been accessing archived files from Project Titan. Lots of them, all within the past 2 weeks. Is that unusual? It is when the access is coming from an admin account that shouldn't have permissions for those particular files. Tom pulled up a log screen. See these timestamps? Someone's been in there almost every night, late, modifying documents, changing version histories, covering their tracks, or trying to anyway. Adrian leaned closer, studying the screen. Can you tell which admin account? Tom highlighted a username. This one. It's a legacy account from the old system that should have been deactivated years ago, but somehow it's still active. Whoever's using it knows what they're doing. They're routing through VPNs, using time delays to make the activity less obvious. But you caught it anyway. I run deep audits every Monday. Just happened to catch this in the sweep. Tom looked at Adrian with sharp eyes. Any idea why someone would be messing with Project Titan files? Adrian made a decision. Tom was trustworthy, one of the few people in the company who cared more about technical truth than corporate politics. Keep this between us, Adrian said quietly, but I think someone's framing Victoria for mismanagement. The documents presented at yesterday's board meeting, they're fake. Or at least they've been altered. Tom's eyes widened. Holy hell, you're sure? Not completely, but I'm finding too many inconsistencies to ignore. The question is who and why. And you want me to help you figure it out. Can you? Tom grinned. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Adrian, my friend, I can do better than that. I can trace exactly where these modifications came from, who made them, and when. Give me 24 hours. Tom, if you do this, if someone's hacking the system on my watch, that's my problem, Tom interrupted. Besides, Victoria's always been straight with me. I'm not going to sit by while someone railroads her. Adrian felt a surge of relief. He wasn't alone in this anymore. He returned to his desk and continued his own investigation. By lunchtime, he'd compiled a detailed timeline of file modifications, cross-referenced with the official project documentation. The pattern was clear. Someone had systematically altered records over the past 3 weeks, creating a false narrative of mismanagement and oversight. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Emergency meeting at 2 p.m. Board wants an explanation for cost overruns. This is happening too fast. Adrian's jaw tightened. Whoever was behind this wasn't wasting time. They were pressing their advantage, trying to force a decision before Victoria could mount a proper defense. He texted back, "Don't concede anything. Stall if you can. I'm working on something." The response came immediately. "What are you working on?" "Evidence. Trust me. Just buy me some time." At 2 p.m., Victoria walked into another boardroom, this one smaller and more intimate. Only 5 board members were present this time, Donald Reeves and 4 others who comprised the executive committee. Marcus Blackwood was there too, sitting off to the side with a tablet and an expression of professional concern. "Thank you for coming on short notice," Donald began. "We wanted to discuss the Project Titan situation in more detail. Some of the board members have serious concerns about the financial implications." Victoria sat down, her posture straight, her expression calm. "I understand, but I need you to know that the information presented yesterday doesn't match my records. I believe there's been a mistake, or something more deliberate." "That's a serious accusation," said Margaret Walsh, a board member who'd always been skeptical of Victoria's leadership. "Are you suggesting Marcus falsified data?" "I'm suggesting that the data he presented doesn't match the official project reports I review weekly, which means either my reports are wrong or his are." Marcus spoke up, his voice reasonable and measured. "Victoria, I understand you're under stress, but these are the official accounting figures. I pulled them directly from the finance department." "Then someone in the finance department is providing incorrect information." Or, Margaret interjected, "you've been receiving summarized reports that didn't include all the details. Sometimes executives prefer high-level overviews and miss the granular problems." Victoria felt the trap closing around her. Every defense she offered could be reframed as deflection or incompetence. She needed proof, not assertions. "I request a formal audit," she said firmly. "Independent review of all Project Titan financials and documentation. If there are problems, we'll find them. If there aren't, we'll clear up this confusion." Donald exchanged glances with the other board members. "That's reasonable," he said slowly, "but an audit will take time. Meanwhile, we have investors getting nervous, media starting to ask questions. We need to manage the situation now." "What are you suggesting?" "Perhaps a temporary reassignment. Step back from Project Titan while we conduct the review. Let Marcus oversee the final stages of the launch. It would show the board and the public that we're taking these concerns seriously." Victoria felt her hands clench beneath the table. This was exactly what someone would want. Remove her from oversight, give them free rein to continue manipulating the project, make it impossible for her to discover the truth. I don't think that's wise, she said carefully. Project Titan is too critical to change leadership this close to launch. It would create confusion and delay. Or it might provide fresh eyes and catch problems before they become catastrophic, Margaret countered. The meeting continued for another 40 minutes, circling the same arguments. Victoria held her ground, refusing to step aside, but she could feel support eroding. By the time the meeting ended, no formal decision had been made, but the writing was on the wall. The board wanted her removed from Project Titan. It was only a matter of time. She left the building without returning to her office, taking an Uber to a coffee shop 3 blocks away. She needed space to think, away from the company walls that suddenly felt hostile. Her phone was buzzing with messages. Her assistant, her lawyers, concerned colleagues, but she ignored them all. Instead, she called Adrian. "How bad was it?" he asked without preamble. "They want me off Project Titan. They're calling it temporary, but we both know what that means. Once I'm removed, they'll find more problems, more reasons to question my judgment. This is a slow-motion execution." "Don't give up yet. Tom in IT found something. Someone's been using a backdoor admin account to modify files. He's tracing it now." Victoria's breath caught. "That's proof of tampering." "It's a start, but we need more. We need to know who's behind it and why." "Marcus Blackwood," Victoria said flatly. "It has to be. He's the one presenting all this information, pushing for my removal. And he's got the most to gain. If I'm out, he's next in line for CEO." "Maybe. But we need evidence, not suspicion." Victoria closed her eyes, feeling suddenly exhausted. "Adrian, I don't know what I'd do without you right now. You'd figure it out, you always do, but you don't have to do it alone." After they hung up, Victoria sat in the coffee shop for another hour, watching people come and go, living their normal lives, unburdened by corporate conspiracies. She thought about her journey, building this company from nothing, fighting for every success, proving herself over and over again, and now someone was trying to take it all away with lies and manipulation. But she wasn't going to let them win. That evening, back at the apartment, Adrian made dinner while Victoria worked in the spare room. Maya was doing homework at the kitchen table, her brow furrowed in concentration over a math worksheet. "Daddy, what's 4 times 7? "What do you think it is?" 28? "That's right. Good job, kiddo." Maya beamed and wrote down the answer. Adrian smiled, grateful for these small moments of normalcy in the midst of chaos. This was what mattered. His daughter, safe and happy, growing and learning. Around 8 p.m., after Maya was in bed, Victoria emerged from the spare room, looking slightly more energized. "I've been making calls," she said, "talking to people I trust in the company, trying to understand how deep this goes." "What did you find?" 3 other executives have noticed irregularities in their departments. Nothing as dramatic as what's happening to me, but small things. Reports that don't match their memory, meetings they were supposedly absent from but weren't, decisions attributed to them that they never made. Adrian set down his coffee cup. "It's not just about you. Someone's systematically undermining leadership across the company." "That's what I'm thinking." "But why? What's the end game?" "Corporate takeover. If enough executives look incompetent, maybe someone's positioning for a board coup." "Or," Victoria said slowly, "someone wants to tank the company's value so they can buy it cheap, destroy confidence, crash the stock price, then swoop in with an acquisition offer." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about Victoria's career, it was about the entire company and the thousands of people who worked there. Adrian's phone buzzed. A text from Tom. "Got something? Can you come to the office, now?" He showed Victoria the message. She grabbed her jacket. "Let me call Mrs. Chen," Adrian said, already dialing. "She can watch Maya." 20 minutes later, they were in Tom's basement office, the door closed and locked. Tom looked excited and nervous in equal measure. "You're going to want to see this," he said, pulling up screens full of code and log files. "I traced the admin account modifications. They're all coming from the same location, an IP address registered to a shell company, but routing through a VPN that eventually traces back to," he paused dramatically, "the 12th floor, executive suite." "Can you narrow it down more?" Victoria asked. "I can tell you the exact terminal. corner office, northwest side. Tom pulled up a building schematic. That's Marcus Blackwood's office. Victoria and Adrian exchanged looks. They'd suspected, but having proof was different. There's more, Tom continued. I pulled the access logs for the past month. Marcus has been working late almost every night, accessing files he shouldn't have permissions for. And look at this. He highlighted a series of timestamps. He's been communicating with someone outside the company. Encrypted emails routed through a private server. Can you break the encryption? Adrian asked. Not legally, but I don't need to. I managed to trace the receiving email address. It belongs to Richard Chen. Tom looked at Victoria. Your ex-husband's lawyer. The room went silent. Victoria's face had gone pale. They're working together, she whispered. Marcus and Richard. This whole thing, the housing dispute, the property claim, the timing, it's all coordinated. Adrian felt sick. They're attacking you on multiple fronts, personal and professional. Trying to overwhelm you, make it impossible to fight back effectively. Well, but why would Marcus team up with my ex-husband? Money, Tom said bluntly. If they can force you out of the company, your stock value tanks. Your ex then has a stronger claim to assets. Marcus gets promoted to CEO. They both win. Victoria sank into a chair, her mind racing. We need to present this to the board. Not yet, Adrian said. This evidence shows Marcus accessed files and communicated with your ex's lawyer, but it doesn't definitively prove he altered the Project Titan documents. A good lawyer could argue he was just doing research, being thorough. We need to catch him in the act or find the smoking gun. So what do we do? Adrian looked at Tom. Can you monitor his account? See what he's doing in real time? Absolutely. I can set up alerts for any new modifications. Then we wait and watch. And the moment he makes another move, we document everything. Victoria nodded slowly. In the meantime, I need to keep playing defense. Act like I don't know what's happening. Give him confidence to continue. It's risky, Adrian warned. If he realizes we're on to him, then we'd better make sure he doesn't realize. They left Tom's office with a plan, fragile and dangerous, but better than nothing. As they drove back to the apartment through dark streets, Victoria was quiet, processing everything they'd learned. Thank you, she said finally, for doing this, for risking your job. You do the same for me, Adrian replied. Would I? I don't know anymore. I've spent so long focused on building the company, on success and strategy, I forgot about the people right in front of me, the ones who actually matter. Adrian glanced at her. You're going through a crisis. Don't make it an existential one, too. That got a small laugh. Fair point. Back at the apartment, Mrs. Chen reported that Maya had gone to bed without any trouble. After she left, Adrian and Victoria sat in the living room, too wired to sleep despite the late hour. What happens if this doesn't work? Victoria asked quietly. If we can't prove what Marcus is doing, then we find another way. We keep fighting. That's optimistic of you. I have a 7-year-old daughter who believes in magic and happy endings. Optimism rubs off. Victoria smiled, a real smile this time. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. Adrian paused. You know, before this week, I never really thought about what your life was like. I assumed money and power made everything easier. But you're dealing with the same stuff everyone else does. Betrayal, uncertainty, fear of losing what matters most, just with higher stakes. Everything has a price, Victoria said softly. Success, power, recognition. I thought I knew what I was paying. Turns out I didn't read the fine print. They sat together in comfortable silence, two people from different worlds brought together by circumstance and conspiracy. Outside, the city hummed with late-night energy, indifferent to their small drama. But inside this modest apartment, something was shifting. Alliances forming, trust building, friendship deepening into something neither of them had anticipated. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Marcus would continue his campaign. The board would press for decisions, and the clock would keep ticking toward a confrontation that was now inevitable. But tonight, they had each other. And somehow, that felt like enough. Wednesday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that made the city look deceptively clean and orderly. Adrian drove Maya to school, listening to her chatter about an upcoming field trip to the Science Museum. her excitement a bright counterpoint to the tension coiling in his chest. "And Mrs. Patterson said we get to see real dinosaur bones," Maya was saying, her hands gesturing enthusiastically. "Not fake ones, real ones that are like 1,000,000 years old." 65 million years, actually, Adrian corrected gently. "For most dinosaurs." "That's so old, Daddy. Were you alive then?" Adrian laughed despite himself. "I'm not quite that old, kiddo. But you're pretty old." "Thanks for that." After dropping Maya off, Adrian headed to the office with his laptop bag and a thermos of strong coffee. Tom had set up monitoring software that would alert them if Marcus accessed the Project Titan files again, and Adrian had spent half the night reviewing operational workflows, trying to anticipate the next move in this elaborate chess game. The office felt different today. There was an undercurrent of anxiety running through the hallways, visible in the way people clustered near coffee machines and spoke in hushed voices. Word had leaked about Victoria's potential removal from Project Titan, and the rumor mill was working overtime. Adrian settled at his desk and pulled up his email. There was a message from Tom, time-stamped at 3:47 a.m. "He's been active again. Detailed logs attached. This guy doesn't sleep." The attached files showed that Marcus had spent several hours the previous night accessing archived communications between Victoria and the development team. He'd copied dozens of emails, modified timestamps on several, and created new summary documents that presented conversations out of context. Adrian felt his jaw tighten. This wasn't just corporate maneuvering, it was systematic character assassination. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Board called emergency session for Friday morning. They're voting on my removal from Project Titan. We're running out of time." Adrian stared at the message, his mind racing. Friday was 2 days away. They needed concrete, irrefutable evidence by then, or Victoria would be stripped of her authority and Marcus would have free rein to continue his sabotage. He texted back, "I have an idea. Can you meet me for lunch? Off-site." The response came quickly. "Noon? Coffee shop on 5th? See you there." Adrian spent the rest of the morning pulling together every piece of evidence they'd collected. The inconsistent version numbers, the suspicious timestamps, Tom's access logs, the modified email chains. Separately, each item could be explained away, but together they formed a pattern that was harder to dismiss. The question was how to present it. A formal accusation against a senior executive was career suicide unless you could prove it beyond any doubt. And even then, corporate politics often favored the powerful over the truthful. At noon, Adrian walked 3 blocks to a small coffee shop that catered to freelancers and students rather than corporate types. Victoria was already there, sitting at a corner table with a laptop and a barely touched latte. She'd dressed down today, jeans and a simple blouse, trying to blend in, though her presence still commanded attention. "Thanks for meeting me," Adrian said, sliding into the chair across from her. "Thank you for having a plan. I've been operating on pure defensive mode, and it's exhausting." Adrian pulled out his laptop and opened his files. Tom's monitoring shows that Marcus has been modifying documents almost every night. He's building a comprehensive narrative of incompetence, missed meetings, ignored warnings, budget overruns. It's all false, but it's internally consistent. He's good at this. "Too good," Victoria said grimly, "which makes me wonder how long he's been planning it." "I've been thinking about that. What if this isn't his first time?" Victoria's eyes sharpened. "What do you mean? What if he's done this before? Used the same playbook on other people?" Adrian pulled up a spreadsheet he'd created. "I went back through company records for the past 5 years. 3 senior executives were forced out under similar circumstances, questions about project management, concerns about leadership, sudden revelations of costly mistakes. I remember those cases, Jennifer Martinez, David Park, and..." Victoria trailed off, her expression darkening. "And Sarah Chen, Tom's sister." "Tom's sister worked here?" "She was VP of Product Development, brilliant strategist, universally respected. Then suddenly there were allegations of missed deadlines and quality issues. She was pushed out within a month." Victoria's hands clenched around her coffee cup. "I believed the reports at the time. I trusted the data. But what if it was all manufactured, just like what's happening to me?" Adrian felt a chill run down his spine. If that's true, then Marcus has been systematically removing anyone who might compete with him for years, and nobody caught on because each case seemed isolated. We need to prove it. Show the board that this is a pattern, not just about me. That's going to be difficult. Those executives are gone, and their files are archived. Accessing them would raise red flags. Victoria was quiet for a moment, her gaze distant. Then she pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Sarah? It's Victoria Langford. Yes, it's been a while. Listen, I need to ask you something important. When you left the company, were there ever any irregularities you noticed? Documents that didn't match your memory? Reports that seemed wrong? You did? And you tried to investigate? I see. The conversation lasted 10 minutes. When Victoria hung up, her expression was grim but determined. Sarah kept copies of everything, she said. Every document, every email, every report from her final months at the company. She was convinced something was wrong but couldn't prove it. She's willing to share everything with us. That's huge. If we can show a pattern across multiple cases, we can demonstrate that Marcus has been doing this for years, that he's a threat to the entire company, not just to me. They spent the next hour strategizing. Sarah would send her files that afternoon. Adrian would cross-reference them with the current Project Titan documents, looking for similar methods and techniques. Tom would continue monitoring Marcus's activity, and Victoria would keep playing her role, acting oblivious while they built their case. As they prepared to leave, Victoria reached across the table and touched Adrian's hand. I know I keep saying this, but I need you to understand how much this means to me. You didn't have to get involved. You could have stayed neutral, protected yourself. But you chose to help. Adrian met her eyes. A week ago, you were just my boss, someone I saw in meetings and quarterly reports. But now, and he paused, trying to find the right words. Now, you're the person who reads bedtime stories to my daughter and helps her make pancakes. You're Victoria, not just Ms. Langford, and I help people I care about. Something shifted in Victoria's expression, surprise and warmth, and something deeper that neither of them was quite ready to name. We should get back, Adrian said, breaking the moment before it could become too weighted. They returned to the office separately, maintaining the appearance of professional distance. But Adrian could feel something had changed between them, a connection that went beyond their shared crisis. The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. Adrian sat at his desk, running through operational reports while his mind churned through strategy and evidence. Around 3 p.m., his email pinged with a message from Sarah Chen, subject line, everything. The attachment was massive, nearly 2 gigabytes of compressed files. Adrian downloaded it to an encrypted drive and began extracting the contents. Spreadsheets, emails, project documents, meeting notes, 5 years of Sarah's career, meticulously organized and preserved. As he started reviewing the files, patterns began to emerge. The same techniques Marcus was using against Victoria had been employed against Sarah. Modified timestamps, altered approval chains, communications taken out of context. Even some of the same phrases appeared in the summary documents, as if Marcus had a template he followed. Adrian's phone buzzed. Tom. He's active again, making changes to Project Titan financial reports. Want me to block him? Adrian thought quickly. If they blocked Marcus now, he'd know someone was onto him and might destroy evidence. But if they let him continue, he'd keep building his false narrative. He texted back. Let him work. But capture everything. Screenshots, version histories, the works. We need ironclad documentation. Tom's response was immediate. On it. This guy is going down. At 5 p.m., Adrian left the office and picked up Maya from aftercare. She was bubbling with energy, eager to tell him about her day, and he listened with half his attention while the other half remained fixed on the problem of how to expose Marcus without becoming collateral damage. When they got home, Victoria was already there, her laptop open on the kitchen table, her expression focused and intense. I've been reviewing Sarah's files, she said. It's worse than we thought. Marcus didn't just fabricate evidence. He actively sabotaged her projects, delayed approvals, redirected resources, created bottlenecks that made her look incompetent. Can we prove it? Some of it. Sarah kept detailed logs of her workflow, including requests that were mysteriously stalled or ignored. If we compare them to Marcus's access records from that period, we can show he was interfering directly. Maya wandered into the kitchen, curious about the intense conversation. What are you guys working on? Just some complicated work stuff, sweetheart, Adrian said. Nothing for you to worry about. Is Victoria in trouble? The question caught both adults off guard. Maya was perceptive, picking up on the tension that had been building all week. Victoria crouched down to Maya's eye level. "I am having some problems at work," she said honestly. "But your dad is helping me solve them. He's very good at solving problems." "My dad is the best at solving problems," Maya agreed with the absolute confidence of a 7-year-old. "He fixed my bike when the chain came off, and he knows how to make the internet work when it's being stupid." Adrian smiled. "Well, this is a different kind of problem, but I'm doing my best." After dinner and Maya's bedtime routine, Adrian and Victoria returned to their research. They worked side by side at the kitchen table, laptops open, documents spread between them, building their case piece by methodical piece. Around 10 p.m., Tom sent another update. "You need to see this now," Adrian called him immediately. "What did you find?" "Marcus just sent an encrypted email to Richard Chen's lawyer. I couldn't break the encryption, but I did catch the metadata. And Adrian, he attached files from Victoria's personal employee record, salary history, performance reviews, confidential HR documents." Victoria's face went pale. "That's illegal. Those files are protected." "Extremely illegal," Tom confirmed. "He's hacking into HR systems now. Whatever he's planning, it's escalating." Adrian felt a surge of anger. "Can you document this? Get screenshots of the access logs?" "Already done. I've been capturing everything. But Adrian, you need to be careful. If Marcus is desperate enough to break into HR files, he might be desperate enough to do other things. Dangerous things." After hanging up, Adrian turned to Victoria. "We need to move faster. Friday might be too late." "What are you suggesting?" "We go to the board tomorrow. Present everything we have, even if it's not perfect. The HR breach alone should be enough to trigger an investigation." Victoria shook her head. "The board won't act without concrete proof of wrongdoing related to Project Titan. Personal file access might get Marcus a reprimand, but it won't stop the vote to remove me. We need to connect him directly to the document alterations." "Then we set a trap." Victoria looked at him sharply. "What kind of trap?" Adrian's mind was racing, pieces falling into place. "Tom can monitor Marcus's activity in real time, right? So we create a situation where Marcus has to make a move we can track. Something that forces his hand." "How?" "You announce tomorrow that you're conducting your own internal audit of Project Titan, that you've found discrepancies, and you're bringing in external auditors to review everything. Marcus will panic. He'll try to cover his tracks or plant more evidence, and when he does, we'll catch him in the act." Victoria considered this, weighing risks and possibilities. "It's dangerous. If he realizes we're onto him, he won't. He thinks you're scrambling to defend yourself, not investigating him. We use his own arrogance against him." A slow smile spread across Victoria's face. "You know, for an operations manager, you think like a chess player. I play chess with Maya every Sunday. She beats me about half the time. Smart kid. Takes after her mom." Adrian's voice softened. "She was brilliant. Would have loved this kind of strategic puzzle." It was the first time he'd mentioned his late wife to Victoria. The moment hung between them, intimate and fragile. "I'm sorry you lost her," Victoria said quietly. "Me too. Every day." Adrian closed his laptop. "But I have Maya, and that makes everything worth it." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of shared confidences settling around them. Then Victoria stood, stretching her back. "I should get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be intense." "Victoria," Adrian said as she turned to leave, "we're going to win this. I know we are." She looked back at him, her expression soft in the dim kitchen light. "I believe you." The next morning, Thursday, Victoria arrived at the office early and called a meeting with her senior leadership team. Adrian wasn't present. His role was behind the scenes, but he heard about it within an hour through the office grapevine. Victoria had announced that she was launching a comprehensive audit of Project Titan, including external oversight and forensic accounting. She expressed concern about the discrepancies that had been raised and wanted to ensure complete transparency. The audit would begin immediately, and results would be presented to the board before Friday's vote. The announcement sent shockwaves through the executive floor. Marcus Blackwood's carefully constructed narrative was suddenly threatened by the very thing he'd tried to prevent: thorough, independent investigation. Adrian watched from his desk as the news spread. Employees huddled in conference rooms. Phones buzzed with urgent calls, and the energy in the building shifted from anxious uncertainty to electric tension. At 11:30 a.m., Tom sent an urgent message. He took the bait. Marcus is accessing files like crazy, deleting, modifying, covering tracks. I'm capturing everything. Adrian felt his heart rate accelerate. The trap was working. He spent the next hour coordinating with Tom, documenting every move Marcus made. The senior executive was in full panic mode, accessing systems he shouldn't have permission for, altering documents with increasingly obvious desperation. Then, at 1:15 p.m., something unexpected happened. Adrian's desk phone rang. It was Marcus Blackwood's assistant. "Mr. Cole? Mr. Blackwood would like to see you in his office immediately." Adrian's blood ran cold. "Did he say what this was regarding?" "Just that it's urgent. He's waiting for you now." Adrian's mind raced. Why would Marcus want to see him? Had he somehow discovered Adrian's involvement in the investigation? Was this a confrontation or something worse? He texted Tom. "Marcus called me to his office. If I'm not out in 30 minutes, come looking for me." Tom's response was immediate. "Are you serious? Should I call security?" "Not yet. Just be ready." Adrian took the elevator to the 12th floor, his heart pounding. Marcus's corner office was exactly as Tom had described. Northwest side, floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture that screamed power and success. Marcus was standing by the window when Adrian entered, his back to the door, hands clasped behind him in a pose that seemed almost theatrical. "Adrian, thank you for coming." Marcus turned, his expression pleasant and professional. "Please, sit down." Adrian sat, forcing himself to appear calm. "What can I do for you, Mr. Blackwood?" "Marcus, please. We're colleagues." He moved to his desk, settling into his leather chair with practiced ease. "I wanted to talk to you about Victoria Langford." "What about her?" "I understand you've developed something of a friendship with her recently, that she's been staying at your apartment due to her housing situation." Adrian felt ice in his veins. How did Marcus know that? "We've been working together on some operational issues," Adrian said carefully. "Her living arrangements are her personal business." Of course. I'm not trying to pry." Marcus leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I'm just concerned about you, Adrian. You're a valuable employee with a good reputation. I'd hate to see that damaged by association." "I'm not sure I understand." "Victoria is going through a difficult time. The board has serious concerns about her judgment, her ability to lead effectively. Tomorrow's vote is likely to go against her." Marcus spread his hands in a gesture of regret. "I know you're trying to help, but you need to protect yourself. Distance yourself from this situation before it impacts your own career." Adrian met his eyes steadily. "Are you asking me to abandon a colleague who needs support?" "I'm suggesting you think carefully about where your loyalties lie. Victoria's time at this company is coming to an end. But you still have a future here, a bright future, potentially. Your work in operations has been exemplary. There might even be opportunities for advancement once the current unpleasantness is resolved." The implication was clear. Support Marcus, betray Victoria, and reap the rewards. Adrian felt anger rising in his chest, hot and bright. This man had systematically destroyed careers, fabricated evidence, and broken laws to advance his own ambition. And now he thought he could buy Adrian's silence with the promise of a promotion. "I appreciate your concern," Adrian said, his voice level. "But I'm comfortable with my current position, and I don't abandon people just because things get difficult." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Irritation, maybe, or calculation. "That's admirable. Naive, but admirable. Just remember that loyalty is only valuable when it's directed at the right people." "I'll keep that in mind." Adrian stood to leave. As he reached the door, Marcus spoke again. "Oh, and Adrian, I'd be careful about the systems you access. Sometimes IT security flags unusual activity. We wouldn't want anyone to get the wrong impression about what you've been researching." It was a threat, thinly veiled. Marcus knew Adrian had been digging through files. The question was how much he knew and what he planned to do about it. Adrian left the office without responding, his mind churning. He took the stairs instead of the elevator, needing the physical activity to burn off adrenaline. When he reached the 8th floor, he immediately called Victoria from a conference room. "Marcus knows we're investigating him. I don't know how, but he knows." Victoria's voice was tense. What did he say? Adrian recounted the conversation, Marcus's veiled threats and attempted bribery. When he finished, Victoria was silent for a long moment. He's scared, she said finally. That's why he's reaching out to you. He sees you as a weak link he can either buy or intimidate. Well, he failed on both counts, which means he'll try something else. Adrian, you need to be careful. If he's desperate enough, I know, Tom already warned me, but I'm not backing down now. Neither am I. That afternoon, the external auditors Victoria had hired arrived at the office and began their work. They set up in a conference room on the 10th floor, requesting files and conducting preliminary interviews. Their presence created a new dynamic. Suddenly, the crisis was real, official, impossible to ignore. Marcus tried to maintain his composure, but Adrian could see the cracks forming. The senior executive was making mistakes, moving too quickly, leaving trails that even a casual observer might notice. At 4:30 p.m., Tom sent a critical update. You need to see this. Marcus just accessed the external auditor's shared drive and planted modified documents there. He's trying to poison the investigation before it even starts. Adrian felt his jaw clench. Can you prove it? I have screenshots, access logs, and version histories. He left digital fingerprints everywhere. Send everything to my encrypted drive. And Tom, thank you for everything. Just get this bastard. Adrian spent the rest of the afternoon compiling evidence, cross-referencing timestamps, building an ironclad timeline of Marcus's activities. By the time he left the office at 6 p.m. to pick up Maya, he had over 100 pages of documentation that proved, beyond any reasonable doubt, that Marcus Blackwood had engaged in systematic fraud, evidence tampering, and corporate sabotage. The question now was how to present it. Tomorrow morning, the board would vote on Victoria's removal from Project Titan. They needed to reveal Marcus's crimes before that vote took place, in a way that was impossible to dismiss or sweep under the rug. That evening, after Maya was asleep, Adrian and Victoria sat at the kitchen table one final time, reviewing their strategy for the next day. We need someone on the board we can trust, Victoria said. Someone who will listen to the evidence and demand action. What about Donald Reeves? He's been board chairman forever. Surely he cares about the company's integrity. Victoria nodded slowly. Donald's old school. He values loyalty and honesty above everything else. If we can show him what Marcus has done. She pulled out her phone and dialed. Donald, it's Victoria. I know it's late, but I need to speak with you before tomorrow's meeting. It's urgent. No, not about my defense. About something much bigger. Thank you. I'll see you at 7. After hanging up, she looked at Adrian. We're meeting him for breakfast tomorrow morning, away from the office. You're coming with me. Me? I'm not. You're the one who found the evidence. You're the one who can explain the technical details. I need you there. Adrian took a deep breath. Tomorrow morning, he would sit across from one of the most powerful business leaders in the city and accuse a senior executive of crimes that could destroy careers and trigger lawsuits. It was terrifying. It was also necessary. Okay, he said. I'm in. Victoria reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that this week, living here, getting to know you and Maya, it's reminded me why I started this company in the first place. Not for the money or the power, but because I believed in building something that mattered, something honest and real. You still believe that, Adrian said. That's why we're fighting. They sat together in the quiet apartment. Two people who'd been strangers a week ago, now bound together by crisis and trust, and something deeper that neither was quite ready to name. Outside, the city prepared for another night, indifferent to their small drama. But inside this modest space, something was building, a determination, a resolve, a quiet certainty that truth would prevail. It had to, because tomorrow, everything would be decided. Friday morning began in darkness. Adrian woke at 5 a.m., his alarm barely necessary given how little he'd actually slept. The weight of what lay ahead pressed on his chest like a physical force. He showered quickly, dressed in his best suit, a navy blue he usually reserved for company presentations, and checked on Maya, who was still sleeping peacefully, unaware that her father was about to walk into the most important meeting of his professional life. Mrs. Chen arrived at 5:45, earlier than usual, her kind face creased with concern. You look stressed, Adrian, she said, switching on the kitchen light. Big day? You could say that. He managed a smile. Thank you for coming so early. I should be back by noon to pick up Maya from school. Take all the time you need. We'll be fine. Victoria emerged from the spare room a few minutes later, dressed in a charcoal gray suit that projected authority and confidence. But Adrian could see the tension in her shoulders, the careful control in her movements. She was preparing for battle. They left the apartment together at 6:15, the city still half asleep around them. The drive to the restaurant took 20 minutes through nearly empty streets, giving them time to review their approach one final time. Let me do most of the talking initially, Victoria said. Donald respects hierarchy and protocol, but when we get to the technical evidence, that's your domain. Don't hold back. He needs to understand the full scope of what Marcus has done. What if he doesn't believe us? Then we go to the board meeting anyway and present everything publicly. It'll be messier, more chaotic, but at least the truth will be out there. The restaurant was a quiet establishment that catered to early morning business meetings, all dark wood and leather booths and discreet service. Donald Reeves was already there, seated in a corner booth with a cup of coffee and the morning newspaper. He stood as they approached, his expression curious but guarded. Victoria, and you must be Adrian Cole. His handshake was firm, assessing. I understand this is about something urgent. Thank you for meeting us, Donald. Victoria slid into the booth, Adrian beside her. What we're about to tell you is going to sound incredible, but I need you to listen to everything before making a judgment. Donald set down his coffee cup, his full attention focused on them. I'm listening. Victoria took a breath and began. She outlined Marcus's campaign of sabotage, starting with the fabricated evidence about Project Titan and working backward through the pattern of executives forced out under similar circumstances. She spoke calmly, methodically, presenting facts rather than emotions. When she finished, Donald was silent for a long moment. His expression was unreadable. Those are serious accusations, he said finally. Do you have proof? Adrian, Victoria said quietly. This was his moment. Adrian opened his laptop and pulled up the files Tom had compiled. His hands were steadier than he'd expected as he turned the screen toward Donald. These are access logs from our internal systems, Adrian began. They show Marcus Blackwood accessing files he shouldn't have permissions for at times when he claimed to be off-site. Here, he clicked to a different screen, are version histories showing documents being modified and backdated. And these are communications between Marcus and Richard Chen's legal team, coordinated to coincide with Victoria's housing dispute. Donald leaned forward, his eyes scanning the data with the focused intensity of someone who'd built a career on reading financial reports and identifying discrepancies. Adrian walked him through each piece of evidence, explaining the technical details in language that was clear but not condescending. This timestamp here, Adrian pointed to a specific entry, shows Marcus accessing the external auditor's shared drive yesterday afternoon. He planted modified documents there, trying to contaminate the investigation before it even started. We have screenshots of the original files and the altered versions. How did you obtain all this information? Donald asked, his tone sharp. I'm the operations manager. I have legitimate access to system logs and workflow documentation. Everything I've shown you was obtained through normal channels, not by hacking or illegal means. Donald sat back in the booth, his expression grave. And Tom Chen in IT confirmed all of this? He's the one who first noticed the suspicious activity. He's been documenting everything. The waitress appeared to take their orders, breaking the tension momentarily. After she left, Donald folded his hands on the table and looked directly at Victoria. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Because I couldn't prove it sooner, Victoria replied. Marcus has been very careful. Each piece of evidence by itself could be explained away. It's only when you see the full pattern that the truth becomes undeniable. Donald was quiet, processing everything. Adrian could see the calculation in his eyes, weighing the evidence, considering the implications, measuring the risks of action versus inaction. The board meeting is in 3 hours, Donald said finally. If we're going to stop this, we need to act now. What do you propose? Victoria asked. I'm going to call an emergency executive session before the regular board meeting. Just the board members, no executives present. I'll present this evidence and recommend we suspend the vote on your removal until a full investigation is completed. But Victoria, his expression was stern. If even a fraction of what you're claiming proves false, your career is over. You understand that? I understand, and I'm certain of what we've found. Donald pulled out his phone and began making calls. Adrian watched as the board chairman's demeanor shifted from cautious to determined, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to making difficult decisions. The first call was to the company's general counsel. The second was to the head of the audit committee. The third was to an independent forensics firm that specialized in corporate investigations. By the time breakfast arrived, Donald had set in motion a process that would either vindicate Victoria or destroy her. The board will convene at 9, Donald told them. I want both of you there. Adrian, you'll need to walk us through the technical evidence. Can you do that? Adrian's throat was dry. Yes, sir. Good. Because if we're going to accuse a senior executive of fraud and sabotage, we'd better be absolutely certain of our facts. They ate quickly, reviewing strategy and anticipating questions. Donald peppered them with scenarios, testing their evidence from every angle, playing devil's advocate with ruthless efficiency. By the time they finished, Adrian felt wrung out but also more confident. The evidence was solid. The truth was on their side. At 8:30, they left the restaurant and drove separately to the office. Adrian's phone buzzed with a text from Tom. Marcus arrived early. He's in his office. What's the status? Adrian texted back. Board meeting at 9. Emergency session. We're presenting everything. Tom's response was immediate. About damn time. I'll be monitoring his activity. If he tries to delete anything, I'll lock him out. The office was bustling with its usual Friday morning energy, employees arriving with coffee and weekend plans, completely unaware of the drama about to unfold on the 14th floor. Adrian took the elevator up, his stomach tight with anticipation. The executive boardroom was already occupied when he arrived. 12 board members sat around the massive table, their expressions ranging from curious to irritated at having been summoned on short notice. Victoria was seated at one end, her posture perfect, her face composed. Adrian took a seat along the wall, out of the direct line of sight but close enough to present when needed. Donald Reeves stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding immediate attention. Thank you all for coming early, he began. I've called this emergency session because information has come to light that requires immediate board attention and action. What you're about to hear is disturbing and consequential. I ask that you listen to all the evidence before making judgments. He nodded to Victoria, who stood and moved to the presentation screen. Over the past week, Victoria said, her voice steady and clear, I've been accused of mismanaging Project Titan, overlooking critical issues, and allowing costs to spiral. Those accusations are false, and I can now prove they're part of a systematic campaign of sabotage orchestrated by Marcus Blackwood. The room erupted in murmurs. Margaret Walsh, the skeptical board member from earlier meetings, leaned forward. That's an extraordinary claim, Victoria. You're accusing a senior executive. I'm accusing him of fraud, Victoria interrupted calmly, of evidence tampering, unauthorized access to confidential files, and conspiracy with external parties to damage this company, and I have documentation to prove every word. For the next 45 minutes, Victoria and Adrian presented their case. Adrian walked the board through the technical evidence, explaining timestamps and version histories, showing the pattern of unauthorized access, demonstrating how Marcus had systematically altered documents to build a false narrative. He showed them Sarah Chen's files, the parallel between her case and Victoria's, the identical techniques used years apart. He showed them Tom's access logs, proving Marcus had been working late nights to modify files. He showed them the communications with Richard Chen's legal team, the coordination between personal and professional attacks. The board members listened in increasingly shocked silence. Even Margaret Walsh, usually so quick to criticize, seemed stunned by the breadth of the conspiracy. When Adrian finished, Donald activated the screen to show one final piece of evidence. Security camera footage from the 12th floor, showing Marcus entering his office at 2 a.m. multiple times over the past 2 weeks. Times that corresponded exactly with the file modifications Tom had documented. The question before this board, Donald said gravely, is not whether to remove Victoria from Project Titan. The question is what we do about a senior executive who has committed fraud, sabotaged company initiatives, and damaged the careers of at least 4 colleagues over the past 5 years. We need to bring him in, said Robert Chen, another board member. Let him respond to these accusations. Agreed, Donald said. He picked up the phone on the conference table and dialed Marcus's extension. Marcus, this is Donald Reeves. I need you in the executive boardroom immediately. Yes, now. It's urgent. The wait for Marcus to arrive felt interminable. Adrian could feel his heart pounding, adrenaline making his hands shake slightly. Victoria caught his eye from across the room and gave him a small nod of encouragement. Then the door opened and Marcus Blackwood walked in. He was dressed impeccably, as always, his expression confident and slightly curious. But when he saw the assembled board members, Victoria's position at the presentation screen, and Adrian's laptop still displaying damning evidence, something flickered across his face: recognition, calculation, and the first hint of fear. Donald, Marcus said smoothly. What's this about? Sit down, Marcus. Marcus sat, his eyes moving from face to face, trying to assess the situation. If this is about the Project Titan vote, I'm happy to present additional documentation. This is about fraud, Donald interrupted. About systematic sabotage of company projects and personnel. About unauthorized access to confidential files and evidence tampering. Marcus's expression didn't change, but Adrian saw his hands clench briefly on the armrests of his chair. I don't know what Victoria has told you, Marcus said carefully, but I can assure you, we have security footage of you entering your office at 2 a.m. on 12 separate occasions over the past 3 weeks, Donald continued. We have access logs showing you modified Project Titan documents during those visits. We have communications between you and Richard Chen's legal team. We have evidence of you planting false documents in the external auditor's shared drive yesterday afternoon. Each statement landed like a hammer blow. Marcus's carefully constructed composure began to crack. This is absurd. Those access logs could be fabricated. By our own IT department? Donald's voice was cold. By an independent forensics firm that's currently reviewing all the evidence? By security systems you don't control? Marcus turned to look at Adrian, and there was real hatred in his eyes now. You did this. I documented what you did, Adrian replied quietly. There's a difference. You had no right to access those files. I had every right. System logs are part of my job responsibilities. You're the one who accessed files without authorization. Marcus stood abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. My lawyer will be very busy, Donald finished. Sit down, Marcus. We're not done. But Marcus was already moving toward the door. I resign, effective immediately. You can't prove any of this, and I won't sit here and be accused by... Security is waiting outside, Donald said calmly. You're not leaving this building until the police have been notified and a formal investigation is launched. Your resignation is noted, but it doesn't exempt you from the consequences of your actions. The door opened and 2 security guards entered, their presence making it clear that Marcus's options had run out. His face went pale, then red, emotions flickering across his features too quickly to identify. This is because of her, he said, gesturing wildly at Victoria. Everything I've done for this company, every success we've achieved, and she gets all the credit. She gets the magazine covers, the recognition, the glory. I did the work. I made the strategies. I built the systems that made her look good. And what did I get? Nothing. Just her shadow. The naked resentment in his voice was startling. Years of bitterness pouring out in a moment of desperation. So you tried to destroy her, Donald said. And in the process, you destroyed 4 other executives who had nothing to do with your grievances. You sabotaged company projects, endangered our reputation, and committed crimes that will likely send you to prison. Was it worth it, Marcus? Marcus didn't answer. The fight seemed to drain out of him all at once, leaving him looking smaller, diminished. Get him out of here, Donald instructed the security guards. Take him to his office to collect personal items under supervision, then escort him from the building. He is not to access any computer systems or remove any company property. As Marcus was led away, the boardroom remained silent. The shock of what had just transpired hung heavy in the air. Finally, Margaret Walsh spoke. Victoria, I owe you an apology. We should have trusted your leadership, should have questioned the evidence more thoroughly. We all should have, Robert Chen added. This is a failure of oversight at the board level. Victoria stood at the head of the table, her expression composed, but Adrian could see the emotion working beneath the surface. What matters now is making sure this never happens again. We need to review our security protocols, our approval processes, our checks and balances. And we need to reach out to the executives Marcus forced out, starting with Sarah Chen. Agreed, Donald said. The vote on your removal from Project Titan is obviously canceled. I move that we issue a formal apology and reaffirm our complete confidence in Victoria's leadership. The vote was unanimous. As the board members began to disperse, several stopped to shake Victoria's hand to express their support and regret. Adrian remained seated along the wall, feeling drained and slightly surreal. It was over. They'd won. Donald approached him as the room emptied. Mr. Cole, what you did took courage and integrity. The company owes you a debt. I just did what was right, Adrian said. That's rarer than you might think. Donald extended his hand. If you ever want to move beyond operations management, come talk to me. We need people like you in leadership positions. After Donald left, only Victoria and Adrian remained in the boardroom. They looked at each other across the expanse of polished mahogany, and suddenly Victoria was laughing, a sound somewhere between relief and disbelief and pure joy. We did it, she said. We actually did it. You did it, Adrian corrected. You had the courage to fight back. I had help. I had you. Victoria moved around the table toward him. Adrian, I don't even know how to thank you. You risked your job, your reputation, everything. You're welcome, he said simply. And for the record, I'd do it again. They stood close in the empty boardroom, the morning sunlight streaming through the windows, casting long shadows across the table where justice had finally been served. Adrian felt Victoria's hand find his, her fingers intertwining with his own. What happens now? He asked. Now we rebuild, fix the damage Marcus caused, restore trust, move forward. She paused. And I need to find a new place to live. My housing situation should be resolved soon. Something twisted in Adrian's chest at those words. The past week had been chaotic and stressful, but it had also been something else, meaningful, connected, real. The thought of Victoria leaving, of returning to their separate lives, felt wrong somehow. You don't have to rush out, he said. I mean, if you need more time to find the right place, you're welcome to stay. Victoria smiled, and there was warmth in her eyes that Adrian had never seen before. I might take you up on that. Maya would probably riot if I left too quickly anyway. She's gotten attached. So have I. The moment hung between them, weighted with things unsaid. Then Victoria's phone buzzed, breaking the spell. She glanced at it and sighed. The General Counsel. I should take this. I need to pick up Maya from school anyway. Adrian checked his watch. Almost noon. They left the boardroom together, riding the elevator down in companionable silence. In the lobby, they separated. Victoria heading back to her office to deal with the aftermath of Marcus's exposure, Adrian heading to his car to return to the normal rhythms of his life. But as Adrian drove through the city streets toward Maya's school, he found himself thinking about the past week, about how a joke shouldn't have mattered, how a simple offer had spiraled into something profound, how a billionaire CEO had become Victoria, someone who made pancakes with his daughter and fell asleep on his couch reading quarterly reports, how life could change in ways you never anticipated if you were brave enough to let it. Maya was waiting at the school entrance, her backpack nearly as big as she was, her face lighting up when she saw Adrian's car. Daddy! Guess what happened in science today? What happened, kiddo? We learned about volcanoes and Mrs. Patterson said I could build one for the science fair and I'm going to make it erupt with vinegar and baking soda and it's going to be amazing. Adrian smiled, her enthusiasm infectious. That sounds incredible. We'll start planning it this weekend. Is Victoria going to help? She's really smart. She probably knows about volcanoes. Maybe. We'll ask her. They drove home, Maya chattering about volcanoes and science fairs and her friend Emma's new puppy. Adrian listened with half his attention, the other half still processing the morning's events. Marcus in handcuffs. The board's apology. Donald's job offer. Victoria's hand in his. When they reached the apartment, Victoria's car was already in the parking lot. Adrian felt his pulse quicken slightly. Inside, Victoria was at the kitchen table with her laptop, but she closed it immediately when Maya burst through the door. Victoria, I'm building a volcano for the science fair. Do you want to help? A volcano? That sounds amazing. Of course I'll help. Maya launched into an enthusiastic explanation of her plans while Adrian started making after-school snacks. He watched Victoria and his daughter discuss volcanic eruptions with equal seriousness and felt something settle in his chest, a rightness, a sense of pieces falling into place. Later that evening, after Maya was in bed, Adrian and Victoria sat on the couch with glasses of wine, processing the day. "The police came by this afternoon," Victoria said. "Took statements, collected evidence. The general counsel says Marcus will likely face multiple charges: fraud, computer crimes, corporate espionage. Good. He deserves it. They also want to interview you and Tom next week. Get your testimony on record." "We'll be ready." Victoria sipped her wine, staring at nothing in particular. "You know what's strange? I should feel triumphant right now, vindicated. But mostly, I just feel tired. You've been running on adrenaline for days, it's catching up. And I keep thinking about what Marcus said, about living in my shadow, not getting recognition." She looked at Adrian. "What if he was right? What if I've been so focused on my own success that I didn't see the damage it was causing?" "Marcus's choices are his own," Adrian said firmly. "Plenty of people work in other people's shadows without committing fraud. He chose his path. Don't take responsibility for his failures." "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just a single dad who reads a lot of parenting books." Victoria laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the city lights visible through the window, the apartment quiet around them. "Adrian," Victoria said softly, "this week, living here, working with you, getting to know Maya, it's been the most real thing in my life in years. Maybe ever. I know what you mean. I don't want it to end, not just yet." Adrian turned to face her, seeing vulnerability in her expression that the boardroom would never witness. "Then don't let it end. Stay as long as you want. We have a spare room, remember?" "I remember," Victoria smiled, "though I should probably start contributing more to groceries, and maybe help with Maya's homework. I'm pretty good at math." She'd love that. They talked late into the night, making plans for Victoria's continued stay, discussing how to navigate the strange new reality of their intertwined lives. The conversation was easy, comfortable, punctuated by laughter and the occasional comfortable silence. Around midnight, Victoria finally stood to head to bed. At the doorway to the spare room, she paused and looked back. "Thank you," she said, "for everything, for believing in me when nobody else did. Someone very wise once told me that truth shouldn't need permission to be heard," Adrian replied with a smile. Victoria's eyes widened slightly. "I said that." "You did. And you were right." After she disappeared into the spare room, Adrian sat alone in the living room for a few more minutes, thinking about the journey of the past week. From a joke that shouldn't have mattered to a conspiracy that nearly destroyed everything. From strangers to something more, something neither of them had quite defined yet. He thought about tomorrow, about Monday morning when they'd return to the office with everything changed, about the board's investigation into Marcus's other victims, about rebuilding trust and restoring reputations, about Maya's volcano project and Victoria's promise to help, about the future, uncertain and unwritten, but somehow full of possibility. Adrian finished his wine, turned off the lights, and headed to bed. Through the walls, he could hear the faint sound of Victoria still working, her keyboard clicking softly. Some things, he supposed, would never change, but others already had. And that, Adrian thought, as sleep finally claimed him, was exactly as it should be. The weekend passed in a strange bubble of normalcy. Saturday morning, Adrian woke to find Victoria already in the kitchen, attempting to make breakfast. She'd managed to burn the first batch of pancakes, but was laughing about it when Maya stumbled out of her bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Why does it smell like smoke?" Maya asked, her nose wrinkling. "Because Victoria's learning that cooking requires watching the stove," Adrian said, gently taking the spatula from Victoria's hand. "Why don't you set the table instead?" "I can set a table," Victoria declared. "I'm not completely helpless." Maya giggled, and the sound filled the small kitchen with warmth. They ate together at the cramped table, Victoria asking Maya about her plans for the volcano project, Adrian refereeing their increasingly elaborate ideas about how to make the eruption as dramatic as possible. "What if we add food coloring to make the lava red?" Maya suggested, her eyes bright. "And maybe some dish soap to make it foam more," Victoria added. "Create the effect of pyroclastic flow." Adrian watched them brainstorm, his daughter and his boss, No, not his boss anymore, just Victoria. Their heads bent together over a notebook filled with Maya's careful drawings. Something had shifted in the apartment's atmosphere. What had started as a temporary arrangement now felt like something more permanent, though none of them had explicitly said so. Later that afternoon, they made a trip to the craft store for volcano supplies. Victoria wore sunglasses and a baseball cap, attempting to go incognito, though several people still did double takes when they recognized her. Adrian found himself instinctively moving closer, protective in a way that surprised him. "I should be used to it by now," Victoria said quietly as they examined different types of clay. "The staring, the whispers, but it still feels invasive sometimes." "Oh, people are just curious," Adrian replied. "You're successful. You built something from nothing. That's inspiring to a lot of people." "Or intimidating." "Maybe both." Maya appeared with an armful of supplies, her face flushed with excitement. "Look, they have glitter. Can we make the lava sparkle?" "Lava doesn't actually sparkle, sweetheart," Adrian started to say. "But this is Maya's lava," Victoria interrupted. "And if she wants sparkling lava, then that's what we'll create." The look Maya gave Victoria in that moment was pure adoration, and Adrian felt his chest tighten with an emotion he wasn't quite ready to examine. Sunday brought rain, the kind that turned the city gray and made staying inside feel virtuous rather than lazy. They spent the day building Maya's volcano at the kitchen table, their hands covered in papier-mâché paste, while music played softly from Victoria's phone. Adrian had never seen her so relaxed, so unself-conscious. She laughed when Maya accidentally got paste in her hair, helped mix the perfect shade of red for the lava, and didn't once check her work email. "This is nice," Victoria said during a quiet moment while Maya was washing her hands. "I can't remember the last time I spent a whole day just being. Not working, not strategizing, not networking, just existing." "You should do it more often." "Maybe I will." She looked at him, and there was something in her expression that made Adrian's pulse quicken. "If I have the right company." Before he could respond, Maya returned, demanding they test the volcano's eruption mechanism. They moved the project to the bathtub, and when vinegar met baking soda, the resulting explosion of red, glittery foam made Maya shriek with delight, and Victoria laughed so hard she had to sit down on the bathroom floor. Adrian captured the moment on his phone, Victoria sitting cross-legged on the tile, her hair disheveled, her expensive clothes splattered with red foam, looking happier than he'd ever seen her. Looking human and real and beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with magazine covers or power suits. That evening, after Maya was asleep, Adrian and Victoria cleaned up the kitchen together in comfortable silence. The volcano sat on the counter, drying, a testament to their collaboration. "I got an email from the general counsel yesterday," Victoria said as she dried dishes. "They've formally charged Marcus with fraud, computer crimes, and corporate espionage. The evidence Tom compiled was apparently even more damning than we realized. He'd been doing this for 7 years, not 5. "How many victims?" "At least 8 that they can prove. Probably more." Victoria set down the dish towel, her expression troubled. "I keep thinking about all the people whose careers he destroyed, whose reputations he ruined. And I missed it. I was right there, running the company, and I didn't see what was happening." "You can't blame yourself for someone else's crimes." "Can't I? I created the culture where he could operate. I was so focused on growth and success that I didn't pay attention to the people being crushed along the way." Adrian turned off the faucet and faced her. "You know what I've learned this week? That you're human. You make mistakes, you miss things. But when you discovered the truth, you fought for it. You didn't try to cover it up or protect the company's image at the expense of justice. That matters, Victoria." She met his eyes, and he saw vulnerability there, mixed with gratitude. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "I don't. I just say what I'm thinking and hope it comes out okay." Victoria smiled, a soft expression that transformed her face. "It always does." They stood close in the small kitchen, the space between them charged with unspoken possibilities. Adrian was acutely aware of how near she was, how easy it would be to close the distance, to... His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. A text from Tom. "You need to see the news, now." Adrian grabbed his laptop and pulled up the local business news site. The headline made his stomach drop. "Tech giant CEO vindicated as Executive Fraud Scheme Uncovered. The article detailed Marcus's arrest, the evidence of systematic sabotage, and Victoria's role in exposing the conspiracy. But it also mentioned Adrian by name, describing him as the operations manager whose investigation provided critical evidence. "They used your name," Victoria said, reading over his shoulder. "Adrian, I'm so sorry. I told the general counsel to keep your involvement confidential." "It's okay. It's not okay. You're going to get attention now, questions, maybe even backlash from people who were loyal to Marcus." Adrian's phone started ringing. Unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again and again. By Monday morning, Adrian had received 17 interview requests, 43 LinkedIn connection requests, and one marriage proposal from someone who claimed to admire whistleblowers. His quiet life as an anonymous operations manager was officially over. The office buzzed with energy when he arrived. People he'd never spoken to before stopped him in the hallway to shake his hand, to thank him for saving the company. Others gave him strange looks, whispering to colleagues as he passed. Adrian kept his head down and made his way to his desk, hoping to disappear into his work. That hope died when he found Donald Reeves waiting for him. "Mr. Cole, walk with me." They rode the elevator to the 14th floor in silence. Donald led him to a corner office, not the boardroom, but a smaller, more intimate space with a view of the city. "Sit down, Adrian." Adrian sat, his mind racing through possibilities. Was he being fired for overstepping, promoted, relocated? "The board met over the weekend," Donald began. "We've been discussing the aftermath of Marcus's arrest and how to rebuild trust internally. We need structural changes, better oversight, more transparency in our approval processes." "That makes sense. We also need people in leadership positions who have proven they value integrity over politics. People who will speak truth even when it's dangerous." Donald leaned forward. "We want to create a new position, Director of Operational Integrity, someone who reports directly to the board and has authority to investigate concerns about any project or executive. We want you for that role." Adrian felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "Me? I'm just an operations manager." "You're the person who uncovered a 7-year conspiracy that multiple executives and board members missed. You're the person who put your career at risk to protect the truth. That's exactly who we need." "I don't know if I'm qualified." "You're more qualified than anyone else we could hire. And Adrian, this comes with a significant salary increase, a seat in senior leadership meetings, and the authority to access any system or document in the company. No more worrying about whether you have permission to investigate." The offer was staggering, life-changing, the kind of opportunity that should have made Adrian immediately say yes. But all he could think about was Maya. More responsibility meant more hours, more travel, less time for school pickups and bedtime stories. The promotion would solve their financial concerns, would secure Maya's future in ways his current salary never could. But at what cost? "Can I think about it?" Adrian asked. "Of course, take the week, but Adrian," Donald's expression was serious. "The company needs people like you. Don't underestimate your value." After Donald left, Adrian sat alone in the office, staring out at the city. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Where are you? We need to prep for the all-company meeting at 2. The all-company meeting. He'd forgotten about that. Victoria was addressing the entire staff about Marcus's arrest and the company's path forward. Adrian was supposed to be there, standing beside her, visible proof that the truth had prevailed. He made his way to the auditorium, arriving just as employees began filing in. The space could hold 300 people, and it was nearly full. Adrian found Victoria backstage, reviewing her notes. "There you are," she said. "I was starting to worry." She stopped, seeing his expression. "What happened?" "Donald offered me a promotion, Director of Operational Integrity. Direct report to the board." Victoria's face lit up. "Adrian, that's incredible. You absolutely deserve—" She paused, noticing his lack of enthusiasm. "You don't look happy." "I don't know if I should take it. More responsibility means less time with Maya, and I've already missed too much of her childhood." "What does Maya think?" "I haven't told her yet." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "Can I give you some advice? From someone who spent 20 years choosing career over everything else?" "Please, that..." Don't make the same mistakes I did. I built an empire, but I lost my marriage, alienated friends, and forgot what it felt like to just be human. This week, living in your apartment, being part of your life with Maya, it reminded me what I've been missing. Success means nothing if you're alone at the end of the day. So you think I should turn it down? I think you should figure out what success actually means to you, and then choose accordingly. She squeezed his hand. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. The meeting started 10 minutes later. Victoria took the stage with her characteristic confidence, addressing the assembled employees with honesty and authority. She explained what had happened, acknowledged the pain it had caused, and outlined the steps the company was taking to ensure it never happened again. Change starts with accountability, she said, her voice carrying across the auditorium. Not just accountability for those who did wrong, but for all of us who missed the signs, myself included. I should have created better systems, asked harder questions, paid more attention to the people rather than just the numbers. Adrian watched from the side of the stage as she spoke, seeing the employees' reactions. They were listening, really listening, in a way people did when they believed someone was telling them the truth. Moving forward, Victoria continued, we're implementing new protocols for project oversight, creating anonymous channels for reporting concerns, and establishing an independent integrity office to investigate any allegations of misconduct. But more than that, we're committing to a culture where speaking truth is valued more than keeping quiet. She paused, her eyes finding Adrian in the crowd. Last week, one person had the courage to look past politics and fear to uncover the truth. That person wasn't a senior executive or a board member. He was an operations manager who believed that doing the right thing mattered more than protecting his career. That's the kind of integrity we need to cultivate at every level of this company. The employees erupted in applause. Adrian felt his face heat up as people turned to look at him, some nodding approval, others smiling. It was uncomfortable and gratifying in equal measure. After the meeting ended, employees approached Adrian to thank him, to share their own stories of feeling overlooked or dismissed, to express hope that things were finally changing. He listened to each person, humbled by their trust, overwhelmed by the responsibility that came with being seen as someone who stood for something larger than himself. It was after 5 p.m. by the time he finally escaped to his desk. He had exactly 45 minutes before he needed to pick up Maya from aftercare. His email inbox was overflowing, his voicemail full, but all he could think about was Donald's offer and Victoria's advice. What did success actually mean to him? His phone rang. Maya's school. His heart jumped. Mr. Cole, this is Principal Morrison. Nothing's wrong, she added quickly, hearing his sharp intake of breath. But Maya asked if she could wait with me instead of going to aftercare today. She said she has something important to discuss with you when you pick her up. Important? Is she okay? She seems fine. Just said it was important. Can you come at your usual time? I'll be there in 20 minutes. Adrian left the office immediately, his mind racing through possibilities. Was Maya sick, hurt, in trouble? He drove faster than he should have, his hands tight on the steering wheel. Maya was waiting in the principal's office, swinging her legs from a chair that was too big for her. She looked perfectly healthy, even cheerful. Adrian felt relief wash over him. Hey, kiddo, Principal Morrison said you wanted to talk to me? Maya nodded seriously. Can we go to the park? The one with the swings? They drove to the small park 2 blocks from their apartment. Maya was quiet during the drive, which was unusual for her. Adrian's concern ratcheted it up again. At the park, Maya climbed onto a swing and started pumping her legs, going higher and higher. Adrian stood behind her, ready to catch her if she jumped. Daddy, Maya said, her voice carrying over the creak of the swing chains, are you going to marry Victoria? Adrian nearly choked. What? Why would you ask that? Because she lives with us now, and you smile more when she's around. And yesterday when I came out of my room for water, I saw you holding hands in the kitchen. Adrian felt his face flush. They had been holding hands. Just for a moment, during a conversation about the board meeting. He hadn't realized Maya had seen. Victoria's just staying with us temporarily while her apartment is being fixed, Adrian explained. But what if it's not temporary? Maya stopped swinging and turned to look at him. What if she wants to stay forever? Maya, sweetheart, Victoria has her own life. She's an important person with a big company to run. She can't just live in our spare bedroom forever. Why not? We have space. And she's really nice, and she's good at science. And she laughs at my jokes even when they're not funny. Adrian sat down on the swing next to Maya. Do you like having her around? I love having her around. It feels like we're a family again. Like when Mommy was alive, but different. Better in some ways because Victoria teaches me about business stuff and Mommy taught me about art. Together it's like having all the things. Adrian's throat tightened. Maya had been 3 when her mother died. She barely remembered her, which both broke Adrian's heart and felt like a mercy. But she remembered the feeling of having a complete family. And apparently, she was finding that again with Victoria. What if Victoria had to move away for work? Adrian asked gently. Would that make you sad? Maya considered this seriously. Very sad. But Daddy, I've been thinking. You always say we should tell people the truth, right? Even when it's scary? That's right. Then maybe you should tell Victoria the truth, that we want her to stay, that we like her a lot, that she makes our family feel complete. Out of the mouths of children. Adrian pulled Maya into a hug, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo and playground dust. When did you get so wise? He asked. I've always been wise. You just don't listen sometimes. They stayed at the park until the sun started setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. On the drive home, Maya chattered about her day, the moment of seriousness apparently behind her. But Adrian couldn't stop thinking about her question. What if Victoria wanted to stay forever? More importantly, what did he want? When they got home, Victoria was already there, working at the kitchen table. She looked up as they entered, her smile warm and welcoming. How was school, Maya? Good. We're learning about the solar system. Did you know Jupiter has 79 moons? I did know that. Pretty amazing, right? While Maya launched into an enthusiastic explanation of planetary facts, Adrian started making dinner. But his mind was elsewhere, turning over possibilities, examining feelings he'd been trying to ignore. The truth was, he'd fallen for Victoria Langford. Somewhere between the late-night investigations and the pancake disasters and the moments of vulnerable honesty, he'd fallen completely and irrevocably in love with her. Not with the billionaire CEO, but with the woman who sat on his bathroom floor covered in volcano foam, who read bedtime stories with different voices for each character, who looked at his daughter like she was something precious. The realization should have terrified him. The gap between their worlds was enormous. She had wealth and power and influence. He had a modest apartment and a used car and a daughter who needed stability. What could he possibly offer someone like Victoria Langford? But Maya's words echoed in his mind. You should tell people the truth, even when it's scary. After dinner, after Maya's bath and bedtime story, after the apartment had settled into its nighttime quiet, Adrian found Victoria on the couch with her laptop. Can we talk? He asked. Victoria closed the laptop immediately, her expression concerned. Of course. Is everything okay? Adrian sat beside her, close enough that their knees almost touched. Maya asked me today if I was going to marry you. Victoria's eyes widened. Oh. She saw us holding hands in the kitchen, and she's noticed that you make me smile more. She's 7, but she's perceptive. What did you tell her? I told her you were just staying here temporarily, that you had your own life to go back to. Adrian paused. But Victoria, I need to ask you something. Is this temporary, or has something changed? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but steady. When I first came here, it was supposed to be a practical arrangement, a place to sleep until my housing situation was resolved. But Adrian, that's not what this has become. Not for me. What has it become? The first real thing in my life in years. Maybe ever. She turned to face him fully. I wake up in the morning, and the first thing I think about is whether I'll get to have breakfast with you and Maya. I come home from work, and the highlight of my day is sitting at that little kitchen table talking about volcanoes and homework and what happened at school. I've built a billion-dollar company, but the moments I'm proudest of lately are the ones where I successfully flip a pancake or help Maya understand a math problem. Adrian felt his heart hammering in his chest. My housing situation was resolved 3 days ago, Victoria continued. My lawyer sent the paperwork. I could move back to my penthouse tomorrow. But every time I think about leaving, about going back to that empty space, I feel like I'm making a mistake, like I'm choosing the wrong thing again, just like I have my whole life. Then don't leave, Adrian said. Stay. Not because you need a place to sleep, but because you want to be here. With us. Adrian, you need to understand what you're asking. I come with complications, media attention, security concerns, a demanding job that requires travel and long hours. Your life will change if I stay. It's already changed. You changed it the moment you sat on that office floor and looked human instead of perfect. You changed it when you offered to help a 7-year-old build a volcano. You changed it when you fought for the truth, even when it would have been easier to give up. Bah! Victoria's eyes glistened. I don't know how to do this. I've never had a real relationship, never built something with another person based on genuine connection rather than mutual benefit. I don't know the rules. Neither do I, Adrian admitted. I've been a single parent for 4 years. I barely remember how to be anything else. But maybe we can figure it out together. What about the promotion, Donald's offer? I'm going to take it, Adrian said, the decision crystallizing as he spoke. But on my terms. I'll work the hours needed to do the job right, but evenings and weekends are for Maya. And for you, if you want them to be. Victoria reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his. I want them to be. They sat together on the couch, hands intertwined, the future uncertain but somehow less daunting than it had seemed an hour ago. The city lights sparkled through the window, indifferent to the small miracle happening in this modest apartment. So what happens now? Victoria asked. Now we tell Maya that you're staying, and we figure out how to make this work, day by day, moment by moment. That simple? That complicated, Adrian corrected with a smile. But worth it. Victoria laughed, the sound warm and genuine. When did you become such an optimist? I'm not an optimist. I'm a realist who happens to believe that sometimes, when you're brave enough to tell the truth, things work out. Is that what we're doing? Being brave? Terrifyingly brave. They talked late into the night, making plans and acknowledging fears, discussing logistics and dreaming about possibilities. Victoria would keep her penthouse for now, but spend most nights here. They'd take things slow for Maya's sake, but they wouldn't hide their relationship. They'd face the media attention together, present a united front. Around midnight, Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled. It's Sarah Chen. She's asking if she can come back to the company. Says if we're really changing the culture, she wants to be part of it. What will you tell her? That we'd be honored to have her back, and that she should talk to our new Director of Operational Integrity about creating systems to prevent what happened to her from ever happening again. I haven't officially accepted that position yet, but you will, because you're exactly the kind of person who takes on impossible challenges and somehow makes them work. 3 weeks later, Adrian stood in his new office on the 12th floor, the same floor where Marcus had orchestrated his schemes, but in a different corner with windows facing east instead of northwest. The space was larger than his entire apartment, with a desk that could seat 6 people and a view that stretched to the horizon. It felt surreal and slightly uncomfortable, like wearing a suit that didn't quite fit. But Donald had insisted that the Director of Operational Integrity needed a presence that commanded respect, and apparently that meant an office with its own conference table. Sarah Chen knocked on his open door, carrying a thick folder. Got a minute? She asked. Always. Come in. Sarah had returned to the company 2 weeks ago as VP of Product Development, the position she'd been forced out of years earlier. Together, she and Adrian had been working to identify all of Marcus's victims and offer them opportunities to return or receive proper settlements. I've been going through the files from my original termination, Sarah said, settling into a chair. Found something interesting. Marcus wasn't working alone on all of these cases. There was a junior executive helping him, someone named Jennifer Park. She left the company right after Marcus was arrested. Adrian leaned forward. Do we have evidence of her involvement? Email trails, access logs. Nothing definitive, but enough to warrant investigation. Should I send it to the police? Send it to me first. Let me review everything and put together a comprehensive report. If Jennifer was coerced or manipulated by Marcus, I want to understand the full context before we bring in law enforcement. Sarah nodded approvingly. This is why Donald chose you for this role. You think about the people, not just the evidence. After Sarah left, Adrian spent an hour reviewing the new information. The work was challenging, sometimes frustrating, but deeply meaningful. Every case they resolved, every person they helped, felt like a small victory against the corruption Marcus had spread through the company. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Leaving work early today. Maya's volcano presentation is at 4, right?" Adrian smiled and texted back, "Wouldn't miss it for anything." The science fair was held in the school gymnasium, tables arranged in rows displaying projects ranging from simple to sophisticated. Maya's volcano sat on a table in the center, its papier-mâché sides painted in dramatic reds and oranges, the crater filled with baking soda waiting for its moment. Maya stood beside her project wearing a handmade sign that read, "Volcanologist Maya," in careful letters. When she saw Adrian and Victoria arrive, her face lit up. "You both came." "Of course we came," Victoria said, giving Maya a hug. "We built this together. We have to see it succeed." The presentations began, students explaining their projects to judges and parents. When Maya's turn came, she launched into her explanation with confidence. "Volcanoes are formed when magma from inside the earth pushes up through cracks in the crust," she said, pointing to a diagram she'd drawn. "When the pressure gets too big, the volcano erupts. Like this." She poured vinegar into the crater, and the chemical reaction created a spectacular eruption of red, glittery foam that flowed down the sides of the volcano to the gasps and applause of onlookers. The judges awarded Maya second place in her grade category. She was thrilled, bouncing on her toes as they pinned the ribbon to her display board. "We did it!" she exclaimed. "We won!" "You did it," Adrian corrected. "This was your project, your hard work. But I couldn't have done it without you guys." Maya looked between Adrian and Victoria. "We're a really good team." That evening, back at the apartment, they celebrated with ice cream and Maya's choice of movie. She fell asleep halfway through, curled up between Adrian and Victoria on the couch, her ribbon still clutched in one hand. Adrian carefully carried her to bed, tucking her in with her stuffed rabbit. When he returned to the living room, Victoria was still on the couch, looking thoughtful. "What are you thinking about?" Adrian asked, settling beside her. "How much things have changed in a month. 4 weeks ago, I was sitting on an office floor with nowhere to go and no one to trust. Now I'm here, in this apartment, part of something real and meaningful. It doesn't feel like my life." "Whose life does it feel like?" "Someone happier, someone who figured out what actually matters." Adrian pulled her close, feeling her relax against him. "For what it's worth, I like this version of you better than the one in the magazine photos. Even though this version burns pancakes and gets glitter in her hair? Especially because of those things." They sat together in the quiet apartment, the city humming beyond the windows, the future stretching ahead with all its uncertainty and promise. Victoria's phone buzzed with an email notification, but for once, she didn't check it. The work could wait. This moment, this simple, perfect moment of being present, was more important. "Adrian?" Victoria said softly. "Thank you." "For what?" "For making a joke that shouldn't have mattered. For offering me a place to stay when you had no reason to trust me. For seeing me as a person instead of a position. For teaching me that building a life matters more than building an empire. You would have figured it out eventually." "Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to figure it out alone." 6 months later, the company held its annual shareholders meeting. Victoria stood on stage, delivering her report on the year's achievements and challenges. She spoke about the Marcus Blackwood scandal with unflinching honesty, about the systemic changes they'd implemented, about the commitment to integrity that now defined their corporate culture. "Our stock price took a hit when the news broke," Victoria said, her voice steady and clear. "Some investors worried that the scandal would damage our reputation beyond repair. But I'm pleased to report that we've not only recovered, we've grown. Revenue is up 18%, employee satisfaction scores are at an all-time high, and we've been named one of the most ethical companies in our industry." She paused, letting the applause wash over her. Then she continued, "But the numbers don't tell the whole story. What matters more is that we've created a workplace where people feel safe speaking truth, where integrity is valued over politics, where everyone from the CEO to the newest intern understands that doing the right thing is never the wrong choice." In the audience, Adrian sat with Sarah Chen and Tom from IT, watching Victoria command the stage with the same confidence she'd always possessed, but tempered now with humility and genuine connection. She caught his eye during her speech and smiled, a private moment of acknowledgement in the public setting. After the meeting, shareholders mingled in the lobby. Several approached Victoria to congratulate her on the turnaround. Others approached Adrian, having read about his role in uncovering the fraud, asking questions about the new integrity protocols. Donald Reeves found them both near the coffee station, his expression pleased. "Excellent presentation, Victoria. And Adrian, the board is very impressed with your work. The Integrity Office has exceeded all our expectations." "Thank you, sir." "I heard a rumor," Donald continued, his eyes twinkling, "that you two are engaged. Any truth to that?" Victoria and Adrian exchanged glances. The engagement had happened 2 weeks ago, quietly, in the same park where Maya had asked if they were going to get married. No photographers, no announcement, just the three of them, and a simple ring that had belonged to Adrian's grandmother. "It's true," Victoria said, reaching for Adrian's hand, "though we're keeping it low-key for now." "Congratulations to you both. When's the wedding?" "We haven't set a date yet," Adrian said. "We're taking our time, doing things right." "Smart approach," Donald raised his coffee cup in a toast. "To doing things right. May that be the company's motto from now on." Later that evening, back at the apartment, which Victoria had officially made her primary residence, the penthouse now used only for occasional business entertaining, they sat around the kitchen table with Maya, who was working on a project about the solar system. "Did you know," Maya said, not looking up from her poster board, "that Saturn's rings are made of ice and rock? And that if you could find a bathtub big enough, Saturn would float?" "I didn't know that," Victoria replied. "That's fascinating. Mrs. Patterson says I should be an astronaut when I grow up, but I think I want to be a scientist who studies volcanoes, or maybe run a company like you. Can I do both?" "You can do anything you want," Adrian said. "The question is what you want most." Maya considered this seriously. "I think I want to be happy. That seems like the most important thing." Victoria caught Adrian's eye across the table, and he saw his own thoughts reflected in her expression. Out of the mouths of children, indeed. "That's very wise, sweetheart," Victoria said. "Being happy is definitely the most important thing." After Maya went to bed, Adrian and Victoria stood together by the kitchen window, looking out at the city lights. The same view Adrian had seen countless times before, but it looked different now. Brighter somehow, more full of possibility. "Do you ever miss it?" Adrian asked. "The penthouse, the luxury, the life you had before?" Victoria shook her head. "I miss the simplicity of not being in the public eye. But the rest of it? No. That life was lonely. This life," she gestured around the modest apartment, "this life is full. I'll take full over luxurious any day. Even when we run out of hot water because Maya took a 40-minute bath. Even then." They stood together in comfortable silence. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances, who'd built something real from what should have been temporary, who'd chosen truth over convenience and discovered that sometimes the reward for doing the right thing was getting to keep doing it. "Adrian," Victoria said softly, "do you remember what you said that night in the office when you made the joke about me moving in with you? I remember thinking I'd probably made a career-ending mistake. You said, 'You could always move in with me?' Just like that. Casual, throwaway, a joke that shouldn't have mattered. But it did matter. It changed everything." Victoria turned to face him fully. "One joke, one offer, one moment of kindness when I was at my lowest. And it led to all of this. To us." Adrian pulled her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume mixed with the apartment's lived-in smell of dinner and Maya's art projects and home. "Sometimes," he said, "the most important moments are the ones that don't feel important at the time. We just have to be brave enough to follow where they lead." "And where do you think this moment is leading?" "Anywhere we want it to. That's the beautiful part." They stood together in the window, two silhouettes against the city lights, a billionaire CEO and a single father who'd become something more than the sum of their parts. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, indifferent to individual stories. But inside this third-floor apartment, a different story was being written, one about truth and courage, about finding family in unexpected places, about the power of doing the right thing even when it's terrifying. And somewhere in a bedroom down the hall, a 7-year-old girl slept peacefully, dreaming of volcanoes and stars, secure in the knowledge that she was loved and protected and part of something whole. It wasn't the ending anyone would have predicted. But then again, the best endings rarely are. It was simply the truth, playing out the way truth does when given the chance. Messy and beautiful and real. And in a world that often favored fiction over fact, that felt like its own kind of victory.